This is Atomic Shinobi and today I'm going to narrate what if Naruto was son of Fox God. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
A blonde woman told her daughter coloring something on the carpet floor, "Sakura, it's time for bed." 4-year-old Sakura begged her mother, "Can't I stay up a little longer?" Sakura's mother told her daughter, "No can do, kiddo." Sakura pouted and said, "Ah, why not?" Her mother made fun of her by saying, "Because if you don't go to bed then I won't read you a bedtime story." Sakura's mother heard the faucet running and grinned before bending down to retrieve Sakura's colored pencils and a few of her colored drawings. Sakura's eyes widened as she sprinted off the floor, up the stairs, and into the bathroom. After that, she went upstairs to Sakura's room and discovered her already in bed, dressed in her pajamas. Sakura's mother sat by the foot of her daughter's bed, holding a storybook, and asked, "So what would you like for me to read to you tonight?" Sakura embraced a yellow fox plush toy with a green diamond on its forehead and exclaimed, "I want you to read me the story of our goddess." Sakura's mother opened the storybook and said to her daughter, "Okay, but first you must know about her family history and the role they along with the other gods played in shaping the shinobi world." Sakura's mother began by showing her daughter a picture of a huge creature with one eye that had ripples in it and many tomos on the ripple lines. A long time ago, before the hidden villages were formed, before there were even shinobi, there existed a god known as the Jubi. She then showed Sakura the map of the elemental nations. The land of wind was led by the god Shukaku the Ichibi, and a picture of a giant tanuki made of sand with blue markings around his body. The Jubi ruled over the land, and during his reign there was an era of peace and prosperity, but as his territory expanded he decided to divide himself so he could properly watch over his people. However, in doing so the Jubi unknowingly split his kingdom into what we know today as the 5 great shinobi nations. She showed Sakura an illustration of a huge 3-tailed green turtle and a 6-tailed white slug, saying, "The land of water was ruled by the gods Isobu the Sanbi and Seiken the Rokubi." She pointed to a 2-tailed cat that seemed to be made of blue fire and a giant ox with 8 octopus-like tails, saying, "The land of lightning was ruled by the gods Matabi the Nibi and Gyuki the Hachibi." She pointed to a huge red ape with 4 tails and a huge white horse-like creature with 5 tails, saying, "The land of earth is ruled by the gods Sun Goku the Yanbi and Kokuo the Gobi." She gestured to a huge red-furred fox with 9 tails and said, "And the land of fire, which is the country we live in, that is ruled by Kurama the 9-tailed fox." She turned the page to reveal the 9 gods and their armies engaged in combat as Sakura gazed in wonder at them, making her mother smile. Each nation was made up of several villages that worshipped that god, and they believed that their god was the true ruler of all the elemental nations, so they began fighting, she said. She turned the page to reveal a woman with delicate facial features and long, flowing white hair that touched the ground. The fighting was so bad that they ended up destroying the land, but then the goddess Kaguya, who was a descendant of the Jubi, decided to stop the fighting by absorbing all of the 9 gods' power back into herself, she said. She had 2 horns that protruded from her head, white eyes resembling those of the Hyuga clan, and a third eye with vertically parted eyelids on her forehead. She is dressed in a transitional, high-colored kimono with elaborate lines and tomo lining the gown's edges and center. She turned the page to reveal a huge creature with black spiky skin, 3 rows of dorsal fins, sharp claws, razor-sharp teeth, and a long, powerful tail. Her twin sons Hagoromo and Hamura Otsutsuki tried to stop her, but she was determined to get them back, but they wouldn't go down without a fight, and the wars escalated. Things got so bad that they brought destruction upon themselves with the Great Destroyer. Sakura tightened her embrace with her plush toy as she shuddered in terror at the terrifying creature. She turned the page to reveal the monster engaged in combat with a giant rabbit that had a humanoid upper body, sharp teeth, and the Rinne Sharingan on its forehead. The creature rose from the sea, destroyed the armies, and defeated the 9 gods. Princess Kaguya transformed herself into her god form to battle the Mosinter. Sakura's mother lamented, but even Princess Kaguya was no match for the monster and was killed. On its back is a great spherical mass of chakra with the heads of the 9 gods emerging from it, along with chakra arms that are grabbing on to the monster. After laying waste to everything, the monster returned to sea. Princess Kaguya's twin sons helped mankind rebuild, and to help move things along much easier the 9 gods bestowed power to their popol, which we call chakra. With everyone working together, they were able to rebuild, and along the way one of the descendants of the god Kurama, Uzumaki Mito, fell in love with our beloved first Hokage. Their marriage brought much needed moral boost to everyone, and together they founded our village. Many of the other lands copied our system and formed what we know today as the hidden villages. She turned the next page to show the different hidden villages. But living with peace made Popol forget about the sins of the past and ended up repeating the same mistakes, which brought back the Great Destroyer, and our beloved first Hokage had to stop him. Turning another page, Sakura saw a giant red fox with 9 tails fighting the monster with the first Hokage on her head using his famous wood-style jutsu to restrain the monster's arms and legs. But the monster was too strong. In fact, it has gotten stronger since the last time it appeared. Our Hokage and Lady Mito barely escaped with their lives as the monster destroyed everything. It moved from village to village, punishing them for their wrongdoings. Turning the page, she showed the monster stomping over the hidden villages before going back into the ocean. "Remember when I showed you our village's reminder?" she asked her daughter, who nodded rapidly in response. They started to rebuild again, but this time they left reminders so they can never forget the consequences of their actions. Sakura recalls how enormous claws caused a huge gash and footprint on the Hokage monument. She shows Sakura a picture of a very attractive woman with a green diamond on her forehead, blonde hair tied in 2 pigtails, and a gray kimono style sleeveless blouse that is held closed by a broad, dark bluish gray obi that matches her pants. Okay, now we're getting to the part you like. Our current goddess Lady Tsunade is a descendant from Kurama as well as the granddaughter of our first Hokage and his wife Mito. Lady Tsunade was proclaimed to be the most beautiful woman in the world. She's famous for her incredible strength and healing abilities. Her large breasts show off a generous amount of cleavage when her blouse is closed quite low. She is dressed in high heels and open-toed black strappy sandals. Sakura always admired the goddess and aspired to be like her when she grew up, and her eyes glistened when she saw how beautiful she was. Lady Tsunade is a very kind yet stubborn woman. According to Lady Kushina, who is also a descendant of the god Kurama, during her 16th birthday party Lady Tsunade snuck away from the party and descended from her castle in the heavens down into the land of fire, where she encountered her husband Master Jiraiya. They immediately disliked each other, and Lady Tsunade wanted to kill him on several occasions for trying to sneak a peek at her in the bath. Both of them laughed. She stopped when she saw that Sakura was sound asleep, closed the book, and bid Sakura good night. But even so, they kept spending time together, and Lady Tsunade found Master Jiraiya's company to be a welcome change to her predictable life. Even so, they fell in love, and Lady Tsunade gave birth to a baby boy named Good Night Sakura. A voice behind Sakura's mother whispered, "Sleep tight." She turned around and saw her husband Kazashi grinning at her. "Hey, Mebuki-chan." Mebuki quietly reprimanded her husband, saying, "Kazashi, don't sneak up on me like that." As he led her out of Sakura's room, he inquired, "Sorry, so how was your day?" "Well," Mebuki rambled as she shut Sakura's room door. Sakura is dreaming of meeting Lady Tsunade and her family while she sleeps soundly. The residents of Konoha had a good day today. The weather was ideal and many of the villagers were out and about having a good time. The fact that their goddess Tsunade, a descendant of the fox god Kurama, who established and governed the land of fire before her, will be visiting them today is another reason why everyone is thrilled. The villagers were overjoyed that their goddess had selected one of their best shinobi as a mate, and she had visited them last to declare that she had chosen Jiraiya as her mate. Every villager had a crucial task to complete, but none had it more difficult than the 4th Hokage Minato Namikaze, who had the enviable responsibility of ensuring that everything was running smoothly. As he stretched and suppressed a yawn, Minato told himself, "I don't envy this part of the job." "Well, you did wish to be Hokage," a voice behind him observed. Uzumaki Kushina, Minato's wife, was seated by the window's edge when he turned around in his chair. "Maybe I should have let you be Hokage instead," Minato grinned. As she stepped out of the open window and moved to stand beside him, she remarked, "And be cooped up in here all day, no thanks." He gestured to the paperwork and said, "Blame that aunt of yours, she knew how the villagers would get if they found out she was coming for a visit. Which means more work for me." As she examined the paperwork, Kushina remarked, "Oh come on now, it's not that much." A larger pile had already been completed and was prepared for filing, while only a small amount was left. Minato said, "Wait for it." At that moment, Shizune entered the room with additional stacks of paperwork. As Minato placed the piles of papers on his desk, Shizune informed him, "Lord Hokage, these documents need your signature, as well as there are several events that you need to inspect." He asks, "See what I mean?" as Shizune simply blinks in perplexity, unable to comprehend what is happening. Shizune asks, "Did I miss something here?" Kushina laughed and said, "Don't listen to him, Shizune, he's just being grumpy." Shizune exclaimed, "Well, everyone in the village is really excited to see Lady Tsunade." Shizune blushed as Kushina teased, sounds like you just as excited to see her again, Shizune. She told them, nervously scratching the back of her head, of course I'm excited, she was the one who taught me everything I know and we were really close. She's going to introduce Naruto-kun to the village. He's the same age as our daughter, so I hope they can be friends. Kushina exclaimed with excitement, I can't wait to meet him. Minato inquired, speaking of which, where is Naruto anyway? Kushina informed him that she's helping out with the preparations. Minato expressed concern, saying, I hope she doesn't overdo it. Kushina proudly remarked, don't worry, I'm sure she'll make things better using her unique flair. With trepidation, Minato stated, that's what I'm worried about. To finish the look, a young woman who looks to be around 16 years old, with pink hair that ends at her shoulders, is wearing a red tank top with sakura blossoms running along the sides. She is wearing black shorts with a pink apron skirt over them, black low-heeled, calf-high boots, and a forehead protector that she uses as a ribbon. The sweater has a picture of a blonde vixen and her blonde kid on the front and the zipper is undone. She heard her name being called while traveling to see her best friend. Sakura-san. Sakura, the girl, turned to her left and saw a young man with dark skin, who looked to be about 17 years old. He had grayish silver eyes, dark spiky hair that ended at his upper back, and black and red tennis shoes and black pants. He is wearing a blood-red hooded cloak, a black shirt with the image of a full moon and the kanji for chaos in the center displayed on the front, and a tattoo that reads, Bad Dog, on his bare right arm. He is holding a basket full of flowers and is waving at her. When her friend came up to her, Sakura smiled and said, Riser-san, how are you? Riser set aside the flowers, picked up the herbs, and gave them to Sakura, saying, I'm good, I've got the special herbs you asked for. Sakura took the herbs from him and said, Thank you very much Riser-san. He said courteously, You're welcome, so where are you heading? She responded to him, I'm going over to Ino's. Riser showed Sakura the lovely flowers that seemed to glow in the sunlight and said, Me too, I'm dropping off the flowers she ordered. Sakura was amazed by the flowers and exclaimed, Wow, are those the special lunar blossoms Ino's been telling me about? Yes, it's a rare type of flower that my clan cultivates that only blooms when there's a full moon. Riser clarified. Sakura sincerely told him, We're so glad that you decided to share your clan's special flowers with all of us. As they both headed for the Yamanaka flower shop, Riser remarked, It would be a waste if everyone wasn't able to appreciate the beauty of the lunar blossoms. In another scene, a 16-year-old woman with blonde hair wearing twin ponytails is dressed in a black tank top, a black jacket with the Uzumaki clan's emblem on the back, a mid-thigh length orange and black skirt, black shorts underneath, black high-heel, calf-high boots, and a leaf forehead protector around her neck. The young woman told the black-haired young man on a ladder with string lights, Sasuke-kun, you need to hang those string lights a little higher. He was wearing blue pants with black ninja sandals and a leaf forehead protector on his forehead, and his short-sleeved black shirt had the Uchiha crest on the back. Sasuke complained, It's already high enough. An irritated blonde girl asks, What did you say? Turning around, Sasuke blushes as he looks into the blonde girl's ocean blue eyes. Nothing Naruto-chan. While grinning, Naruto says, That's what I figured. Naruto was finally happy with the light's current placement after a few more minutes of experimenting with different positions and telling Sasuke to come down. As he sat down on a nearby bench, Sasuke sighed with relief. He felt something cold against his left cheek and looked up to see Naruto smiling and giving him a soda. Sasuke accepted the soda and started drinking it. Naruto said, Thanks for your help Sasuke-kun, I knew I could count on you. Sasuke mumbled as he kept downing his soda, Naruto grinned as a pair of yellow fox ears appeared on top of her head as a result of a cunning thought. Sasuke saw this and realized it was bad, but before he could do anything about it, he felt a soft object move up his back and under his shirt, tickling him as it went. When he failed to control his laughter, Sasuke let soda drip out of his nose. While Sasuke was trying to clear his nose of the soda, Naruto was laughing hysterically. Sasuke complained, blowing his nose against a napkin, That wasn't funny. It was to me. Naruto repressed another chuckle. As they watched the villagers erect booths and decorations, the two sat in pleasant silence until Naruto made the decision to speak. They sure are going all out for my mom's aunt, huh? She was told by Sasuke, Well, she is our goddess after all, I'd expect nothing less. Cool your jets Mr. High and Mighty, or I'll tell everyone what a pervert the great Sasuke Uchiha is, Naruto said. Sasuke's face flushed as he said, How many times must I tell you, that was an accident. Naruto grinned as he saw Sasuke's face grow even redder. Really, so you didn't hear me say that I was going to wash up in the river and then accidentally walk in on me washing my naked body? Not to mention you hesitated to look away. Naruto began to laugh before placing her arm around Sasuke's shoulder after Sasuke simply turned around and muttered something incomprehensible. OLGHTEN up, at least you got to see my magnificent body, she laughed. As Naruto lowered his head to her magnificent chest, Sasuke questioned, I wonder if our goddess has to go through something like this? A stunning woman with a large bust yelled, he's gone? As she turned to face the frightened maid. The maid, looking at her mistress, who was wearing a gorgeous red and blue kimono with a blue obi, said fearfully, why? Yes milady, Naruto. Sama managed to sneak away when he went to his room. The top of the kimono was loose, exposing a generous amount of her cleavage. Tsunade yelled, I told you to keep an eye on him, which made the maid cower even more and transform into a tiny fox. Whoa there, calm down Tsunade. Tsunade looked to her left and saw her friend Jiraiya coming toward her in a gray kimono. Calm down, calm down. Today is our son's birthday and we were going to celebrate it as a family by going to the Hidden Leaf Village and he goes and sneaks off, she called him fumming. Tsunade blushes as Jiraiya carefully approaches her and motions the maid to leave, which she promptly does. He puts his hands on her shoulders, looks into her amber eyes, and then speaks softly to her, saying, I seem to recall a certain vixen doing the same thing on her 16th birthday. I don't regret sneaking out, but this is his first visit to the world below and it's too dangerous for him to go alone. Tsunade stated with concern. Hey, everything will be alright. He couldn't have gotten that far so let's go after him, Jiraiya says to her. Tsunade asks herself, damn, is this how my parents felt when I snuck away? Jiraiya joked, perhaps he'll find himself a girlfriend. My baby's not old enough to have a girlfriend, Tsunade exclaimed as she ran ahead of Jiraiya, her eyes widening at the realization. Jiraiya yelled, wait up, as he followed her. A kunoichi with sandy blonde hair tied in 4 ponytails was seen on a dirt path leading to the Hidden Leaf Village. She was wearing mesh armor underneath a purple dress that had no sleeves and a purple blouse on top of it, along with a purple sash around her waist, leg guards, hand warmers, and black ninja sandals. Wearing a Suna headband, she was traveling to the Leaf on a goodwill mission when she noticed something outside the tree lines. It's the outfit she wore during the 5-cage summit. When she squinted to try to identify it, she was astounded to see a large yellow fox that seemed to be flying. The flying fox is still visible when she rubs her eyes and looks again. The fox turns and is now approaching her. The kunoichi swiftly produced a scroll and called forth her battle fan, which is fully open in front of her. She saw that the fox was actually getting smaller as it got closer. It changed from being a giant fox to a young man as it went down through the treetops. He was wearing a black hoodie with 2 orange lines running down the sleeves and sides, and he had spiky blonde hair, 3 whisker marks on his cheeks, and a violet diamond mark on his forehead. He landed in front of her and looked into her teal eyes with his ocean blue ones. He is wearing black ninja sandals and black pants with an orange line running down the sides. She stiffens and pulls her fan back in preparation for an attack as the blonde man smiles and approaches her. She glares at him and asks, who are you? Naruto declares with pride, oh, I'm Naruto Uzumaki, believe it. She raised an eyebrow at him, and Naruto just kept grinning while examining her. She saw that he was staring at her body, so she put her fan in front of her. She asked defensively, just what are you looking at? Naruto asks inquisitively, this is my first time meeting a human girl. You are human, right? She murmurs, I might as well be. Although she is descended from the village's god Shukaku, she did not inherit her younger brother's ability to control the sand, and although she was able to control the wind, the village did not consider her to be a legitimate heir. She had it better than her younger brother Kankuro, who decided to work with puppets, at least. She gave that a small smile, which was noticed. Naruto frank with her, you have a beautiful smile, you should show it more. The compliment makes her flush. Just what are you saying? The young woman backs up until her back strikes a tree as Naruto approaches her. Don't come any closer, she admonished. The young woman swung her fan, releasing a powerful gust of wind, but Naruto was gone when he disregarded her warning and raised his hand. When she felt someone grab both of her wrists and pin her against the tree with her hands above her head and her fan thudding on the ground, she turned to look for Naruto. The woman glares at Naruto, but her eyes widen as she realizes how close his face is to hers. She tries to break free, but he is too strong. Naruto smiles as he caresses her left cheek with his free hand. Naruto softly murmured, you're really pretty. The sandy blonde woman's eyes widen at the first kiss that Naruto steals from her, and he presses his lips against hers before she can respond. With a gentle lick of her lower lip, Naruto requests permission to enter. The young woman opens her mouth, allowing his tongue to explore it, and her eyes close. She moaned during the kiss as Naruto pressed his toned chest against hers, causing her to feel his pressure. After noticing how soft her breasts were, Naruto reached down and touched her hip with his free hand. The sensations rushing through the young woman's body were leaving her mind blank, so she slid her tongue into his mouth to taste him and play with his tongue. However, since they both part ways for air, good things must come to an end. Breathing heavily, Naruto said, "You taste really good, what's your name?" Her face flushed as she gasped for breath and replied, Tamari. She had never been kissed before, but her first kiss stoked a deep seated desire and fire inside of her that only grows stronger the longer she is in Naruto's presence. Naruto leaned closer to the left side of her neck and uttered, Tamari-chan, I must have you. As Naruto kisses a spot between Tamari's neck and color, Tamari closes her eyes and groans. Naruto then opens his mouth to show off his enlarged canines. However, he detects a familiar chakra from her before he can mark her. He backs up and examines her perplexed face before saying, her chakra is similar to Shukaku's. As he let go of her wrist and cupped her face with both hands, he remarked, it seems like I have to struggle to claim you as mine. Before heading to the Leaf Village, he gives her one final passionate kiss and flares his chakra to warn anyone nearby not to approach Tamari. But rest assured I will have you, he assures her. As he dashes toward the Leaf Village, Naruto muses to himself, hey, I've only just gotten here and I already found my vixen. Just like Ka-chan did with 2.san. Tamari closes her eyes and inhales deeply as she sags down from the tree's side. She exclaims aloud, what just happened? As she gets over her experience with Naruto. After a few minutes, Tamari is able to gather herself and quickly heads to the leaf. As she rushes toward the leaf, Tamari thinks, I'd better hurry and warn the Hokage. He appears to be heading towards the Leaf Village. A 16-year-old woman with platinum blonde hair that is hip-length, tied in a high ponytail, and a flattened bang on the right side of her face says, here's your bouquet, sir. She is wearing a short, purple, sleeveless blouse that exposes her bare stomach. A shorter black skirt with short fishnet shorts underneath, and a purple apron. Skirt with an open front. Her knees and elbows are covered in fishnet warmers. A man gives her some cash and walks out the door, saying, thank you. She smiles professionally and says, please come again. The man thanks her and leaves the store. The young woman leans on her elbows against the counter and lets out a tired sigh. She thinks about her customer and says aloud, today sure is busy. As she looks up at the ceiling, Ino muses. Those were probably for his girlfriend. The bells on the store door chime indicate that a customer has entered, and Ino murmurs, I don't get it, I have a killer figure, great fashion sense, and a friendly, kind person. So why don't I have a boyfriend? Ino instantly straightens up and smiles professionally. Welcome to the Yamanaka flower shop, how may I? Hey Ino. When Ino looked, she saw that Sakura and Riser had entered. With a bored tone, she remarked, oh, it's just Riser.san and forehead. Sakura sneered, nice to see you too, pig. Riser held up the basket of flowers and said, I've got you the lunar blossoms you requested, Ino.san. As she took the lunar blossoms from Riser and made her way to the back room, Ino exclaimed, oh thank you so much Riser.san. These lunar blossoms are really popular. Especially among couples. She quickly emerged and gave Riser some Ryo. Here's your payment Riser.san, pleasure doing business with you as always. Riser accepted the money for the flowers and said, thank you Ino.san. Ino asked, leaning on her elbows against the counter, so what brings you two here? Well, I wanted to see how you were doing and along the way I met Riser.san who was on his way to deliver you those lunar blossoms, Sakura clarified. Sakura was asked by Ino, so what did you want to see me for? I wanted to know if you weren't too busy to check out the preparations for the festival, replied Sakura. Sure, just let me tell my parents first. You two go on ahead, I'll meet you later, Ino replied to them. Sakura proposed, are you sure? We could wait for you? Yeah, it'll take me a while to get ready, Ino replied. Ino was correct. Sakura informed her, okay then, we'll meet you around the village square. They would have to wait a long time if they waited for her. Ino would have to make decisions about her hairstyle, shoes, and outfit. Regardless of the situation, even if it was just running errands, Ino would always look her best. They said goodbye to Ino and started to head to the village square when they saw a number of shinobi making their way to the main gate. According to Riser, what's going on? As they headed to the village gate, Sakura said, let's go check it out. When they got there, they saw Temari and the fourth Hokage conversing. Minato gestured to the shinobi on guard duty and said, "So this young man you and the guards described is responsible for this?" "Yes, Lord Hokage. This individual was heading towards the village and I wasn't far behind, so when I arrived at the entrance to your village the shinobi that were on duty to watch the entrance were passed out," Temari clarified. Minato said to the two guards, "I see, what did this individual do to you too?" They turned away from the Hokage and gazed at the ground, their faces flushed. Minato looks at Temari and arches an eyebrow at their actions. "You encountered the individual earlier, Temari-san. Did he tell you anything about his intentions?" When Temari recalled her experience with Naruto, the kiss she had shared with him instantly came to mind. The memory instantly caused her face to flush red, and Minato saw that her body was heating up. Minato inquired anxiously, "Temari-san, are you alright?" "Why? Yes, I'm fine. Nothing to worry about." Temari gave the Hokage a quick reassurance. A voice behind Temari said, "Are you sure?" In order to confront Kushina, Temari turned around. With trepidation, Temari said, "Yes, Lady Kushina." After giving her a suspicious look, Kushina smiled knowingly and said, "I see." She then stepped back. Minato turned to the shinobi who had gathered, Sakura and Riser among them, and he knew what that smirk was about. He would ask Kushina about it later. Everyone nodded when he said, "Listen up, we might have a potential intruder and I want you to look for him and if possible capture him alive." Temari stepped up and started to describe their target's appearance, saying, "Temari-san will explain to you all in further detail about the intruder, so listen carefully." Even though she was wearing a pair of black, high-heeled ankle straps, Ino left the Yamanaka flower shop wearing the same outfit as before. "These heels go perfect with the outfit I'm already wearing. I guess that didn't took nearly as long as I thought." As she started to walk toward the village square, she noticed the locals completing the last preparations for the celebration by welcoming Lady Tsunade. Ino also observed how many couples were out and about taking in the celebrations. She was a little envious of the contented couples. Ino was so preoccupied that she failed to notice the person in front of her and bumped into him, thinking, "Seeing all these couples makes me feel out of place." When Ino said, I'm so sorry, I wasn't looking where I was going," she bowed her head in apology. The person said, "It's no problem, I was distracted too." When Ino looked up, she saw a boy her age with ocean blue eyes and bright blonde, spiky hair. With utter enchantment, Ino gazed into the boy's eyes and felt herself losing herself in them. The young man asked anxiously, "Are you okay?" And Ino snapped out of her reverie. Ino assured him, nervously scratching her head, Oh yeah, I'm fine." Naruto said, "That's good. By the way, my name is Naruto Uzumaki." Ino informed him, "Ino Yamanaka." Naruto excitedly took Ino's right hand and kissed the back of it, saying, "Nice to meet you, Ino-chan." When a cute guy kissed Ino's hand, she flushed bright red, just like in the princess stories her parents used to read to her when she was a kid. As he held Ino's hand, Naruto gazed at her. His parents, particularly his mother, had taught him the proper way to treat women, but he didn't do it with Temari because she was the first human woman he had ever met and he was very excited. In addition to her beauty, he was drawn to her because of the poise and confidence with which she carried herself. However, he was determined to follow his mother's instructions this time. Pointing to the villagers preparing for a festival, Naruto asked, "Do you know why everyone is celebrating?" Ino joyfully informed him, "Oh, it's because our goddess is visiting our village today." "Really?" Naruto inquired, a little taken aback that his mother could incite such behavior in others. With great excitement, Ino informed him, "Yes, she's bringing along her family. Apparently today is her son's birthday and she decided to bring him here to celebrate. However, she suddenly became aware of something. Now that I think about it, he has the same name you do." Coolly, Naruto said, "You don't say." With an eyebrow raised, Ino questioned, "You wouldn't happen to be him, right?" Naruto told her the truth. "No, my parents named me after a character in a book." Ino asked inquisitively, "What book is it?" Since his parents named their own son after him, the character in the book must be something. Naruto informed her, "It's called The Tale of the Utterly Gutsy Shinobi." Ino told him, "I've never heard of it. She's read a lot of books, mostly romances, but she's never encountered anything like that." "That's because it didn't sell very well. It was the author's first book, but once the author got really famous and his name was well known, everyone started buying that book. It's almost impossible to find now." Naruto clarifies. Astonished, Ino exclaimed, "Wow, now I want to find the book and read it myself." Naruto said, "You can borrow mine if you want?" "Really?" inquired Ino. Naruto reached into his hoodie and took out a book, telling her, "Yeah, I've already read it and it'll save you the trouble of looking for it." Startled, Ino remarked, "I didn't know you had it on you?" Naruto smiled as he handed the book to Ino, and as she grasped it, their hands touched. "It's a very good book." Naruto marveled at how soft Ino's hand was, and Ino sensed the warmth emanating from it. With her cheeks flushed, Ino said to him, "Thank you." Naruto gestures to the stands where games and food are being sold and asks, "No problem, say, do you want to try out some of the stuff they have here?" As she and Naruto made their way to a nearby gaming booth with the sign that read Ring Toss, Ino made a concession. "Well, I have to be meeting my friends later, but one game can't hurt." As Ino took out some Ryo and paid the vendor, Naruto said to him, "Watch this, Ino-chan." Fortunately, his mother had given him some Ryo before he slipped away. Naruto smirked as he examined the 3 rings the vendor had given him and tossed one toward the higher prizes and the other 2 toward the middle prizes. As he presented Naruto with his prizes, the vendor exclaimed, "Winner." Naruto turned around and showed her the prizes he had won, saying, "Here you go, Ino-chan." The top prize was a big pair of fox plush toys, one of which depicted a male fox with golden blonde fur nuzzling a vixen with platinum blonde fur. 2 tiny platinum-colored foxes were the 2 lesser prizes. He handed the foxes to Ino, who cuddled up to them. Ino leaned closer and kissed Naruto on the cheek, saying, "Thank you, Naruto-kun." This surprised Naruto a little, so he put his right hand against Ino's left cheek and gave it a gentle pat while gazing into her blue eyes. They slowly lean in toward one another until their lips meet in a tender, passionate kiss as Ino leans into his hand and looks into his ocean blue eyes. As Naruto encircles Ino with his left arm, drawing them closer, Ino senses a spark ignite inside of her. Even though her heart had felt empty before, she felt it fill up. Without asking permission, she darted her tongue inside Naruto's mouth and explored every inch of it. Naruto was surprised by how aggressive Ino was acting. Naruto, never one to be outdone, wrestled Ino's tongue with his and, feeling a little brave, reached down and squeezed her butt, making her groan as he kissed her. After successfully pushing Ino's tongue back, Naruto started investigating her mouth. However, as soon as their bodies began to heat up, he realized he needed to mark Ino before they could continue. He reluctantly breaks the kiss, leaving a thin line of saliva in their wake. Naruto exclaimed, panting, "Wow! You're a great kisser, Ino-chan." Naruto leaned his forehead against hers, and Ino returned the compliment by saying, "You're not so bad yourself, stud." Naruto caressed Ino's cheek and said, "I hate to cut this short, but I have to do something, so after you meet with your friends I want to see you again." Ino looks intently into Naruto's eyes and asks, "Where do you want to meet?" Ino nodded when Naruto told her, "We'll meet back here in about an hour." Before Naruto fled, Ino gave him one last kiss. Even as Naruto vanished into the crowd, Ino continued to gaze at his vanishing form. She smiled as she raised her hand to touch her lips. "So that's what my first kiss feels like," Ino muttered, then scowled. "But what's this I'm tasting?" she asked, but before she could think any longer, she heard her name called. "Hey Ino." Sakura and Riser are approaching her when Ino turns around, saying, "Took you guys long enough." Sakura started to say, "Listen Ino, we got," but stopped herself when she noticed what was in Ino's arms. "Is that the fox pair?" she exclaimed, shocked. "Yup." Ino grinned and confirmed. "But the only booth that has that is the ring toss game and you only get one chance at it. How did you get it?" replied Sakura. With an unwavering smile, Ino answered, "Someone won it for me." "What?" "It's true, I met him a while ago and he did the ring toss game and won these for me," Ino clarified. Sakura pointed to the 2 smaller foxes and said, "You do realize what it means to be given those, right? And especially the 2 extras." After gushing, Ino whispered, "And these 2 kits are our children." She blushed. "Of course, if you give the fox pair to someone you love, you'll remain together forever and your love will last through all your lifetimes." Just what kind of guy did Ino meet? Sakura wondered as she watched her friend blush and giggle uncontrollably, but then she remembered the situation. "Listen Ino, we've got trouble. Someone has infiltrated the village and the Hokage wants every available shinobi to find him." This made Ino visibly cringe. "Really? Now?" Sakura hurriedly told Ino, "Yes now, we have to hurry before he messes up the celebration." Ino sighed loudly as she surveyed her awards. She must prioritize her kunoichi responsibilities over her social life. Sakura took out a scroll and sealed the fox plush toys inside, saying, "Okay, let me just put these away." As the 3 friends started their search, Ino questioned, "Do you know what the person we're looking for looks like?" Sakura started to explain, "Well he as they leapt over the rooftops. A young woman in another section of the village has long, straight purple hair in a Heim-style haircut that reaches her lower back. She has fair skin, white eyes, and a very well-developed body, which she conceals with a loose-fitting jacket with lavender and cream cuffs. She is wearing mesh armor, navy blue pants, black, low-heeled sandals, and a leaf headband around her neck. She then looks at the massive, deep gashes on the Hokage monument that were caused by giant claws. She raises her hand and lightly presses a bronze plate against the tips of her fingers. The young woman read from the plate, "Never forget that our actions have consequences, or risk inviting destruction." The young woman is startled and turns around in time to see a young man with ocean blue eyes and spiky blonde hair staring at the claw marks. He then approaches the young woman and stands beside her, gazing at the enormous footprint. As he gazed at the enormous footprint, Naruto asked monotonely, "Can you imagine encountering the monster that caused this?" Nervously, the young woman said, I'd rather not." Naruto joked, "Yeah, too much negative thinking may summon the destroyer." The young woman's eyes widened as she stared at him. "Never mind, that was a bad joke." According to the woman, "It's all right." The young woman looked at Naruto multiple times and flushed as they stood silently, still observing the enormous footprint. She thought he was very attractive. His eyes are as blue as the crystal clear ocean, and his spiky blonde hair was as brilliant as the sun. As Naruto sees her eyes, he smiles, but the young woman's face becomes even more flushed. Naruto questioned, "What do you think of this?" The young woman turned to him and exclaimed, "Huh?" Naruto asked more specifically, glancing at the young woman, "This? Leaving this as it is and not repairing the claw marks or filling in that indent on the ground?" As she avoided looking at Naruto, the young woman's feet suddenly became much more interesting. I think it's best to leave it as it is," she replied without raising her head. "Why?" His follow-up question took the young woman by surprise, but she answered without hesitation, "To remind us what would happen if we repeat the mistakes of the past." Naruto grinned and said, "Good answer." The young woman looked up at him. "Huh? Wouldn't make much sense for a memorial if people forget what it's for. It also helps that there are smart people like you to remind the not-so-smart people," Naruto remarked. His compliment caused the young woman to flush, and she waved her hands in agreement. "No, I am not that smart," she exclaimed. Naruto smiled and said, "Beautiful, smart, and modest. You're the whole package, huh?" Naruto thought it was funny when he saw Hinata's face turn a deeper shade of red. "By the way, my name's Uzumaki Naruto. What's yours?" he inquired. Softly, Hinata replied, "Hyuga Hinata." As he grasps Hinata's hands, Naruto exclaims, "It's nice to meet you, Hinata-chan." When Hinata felt Naruto's big hands over hers, her face flushed even more. Naruto held her hands tenderly, as though they were made of glass. It was very pleasing to Hinata to feel Naruto's hands encircling her own. Naruto inquired, "Hinata-chan, do you have a boyfriend?" No, I don't," Hinata practically screamed, drawing attention from everyone around her. She looked down in shame. Hinata's eyes widened as Naruto put his hand beneath her chin and raised her head to gaze at him. Naruto's face was very close. As he gently pressed his lips against hers, Naruto said, "You do now." Hinata's eyes widened even more at the unexpected kiss, and she felt a sensation spread throughout her body. Steam rises from the top of her head as her face begins to turn red. Naruto feels Hinata's head against his chest as soon as he pulls away from the kiss. When Hinata didn't answer when Naruto called her name, "Hinata-chan," he gently drew her back to discover that she was unconscious. Her eyes appear dizzy, and her face is extremely red. "Hinata-chan, are you?" "Hey you." A young man about his age was riding a large white dog when Naruto looked up. "Get your hands off my friend." The young man yelled angrily as his dog closed in on Naruto. Naruto questioned, irritated, "Who the hell are you?" We're her teammates. When Naruto turned around, he saw a strange young man with black round sunglasses. The young man on the dog said, "Hey Shino, glad you're here," as his dog landed in front of Naruto. Shino calmly told his teammate, "Kiba, calm down and take a close look at the situation." As he dismounted his dog at his friend's request, Kiba arched an eyebrow. He glanced at the unconscious, red-faced Hinata before turning back to Naruto's bewildered expression and the way he was holding Hinata. Kiba sighed and turned to face Naruto, asking, "What did you do to Hinata?" "Hinata fainted again, huh?" He heard Naruto say, "I didn't do anything." Kiba yelled, "Then why is she like this?" In response, Naruto glared and asked, "How should I know?" "Simply put," Shino said, He kissed her. Before turning back to Naruto, Kiba glanced at Shino. You did what? He yelled angrily. Kiba was informed by Naruto. I kissed her. Now even more enraged by what he had said, Kiba was preparing to attack Naruto. However, anticipating this, Shino was able to take Hinata away from Naruto as Kiba lunged at him. To avoid Kiba, however, Naruto leapt back. Naruto waves goodbye and leaps across the rooftops, saying, as much as I would love to kick your butt, I still have things to see before they catch me. Kiba yelled, hey, get back here, but Naruto had already vanished from view. As Shino simply stared at him before turning to face Naruto, Kiba muttered, damn it when I catch that guy. It appears that things are about to get even more lively around here, said Shino. Naruto proclaimed, come on Sasuke-kun, as she pulled Sasuke by the arm. Sasuke sighed and said, what's the hurry Naruto-chan? Naruto turned a corner and immediately bumped into something, landing on her back. I want to check out some of the games before I have to meet with my mom later. When she turned to face the person she had bumped into, Naruto interrupted herself, saying, ow, hey watch where you go. Naruto had also landed in the same position as Naruto. They simply stared at one another before standing up simultaneously and in the same manner. They opened their mouths to speak, but nothing came out as they gazed into each other's blue eyes. Sasuke watched in astonishment. If Naruto had been a boy, this man would have looked just like her. Sasuke continued to observe Naruto and Naruto's interaction, thinking, come to think of it he looks like Naruto-chan's reverse sexy jutsu. When their fingers touched, Naruto and Naruto felt a shiver run up their spines and swiftly withdrew and turned around. They had raised their right hands and extended them toward each other. With her arms encircling her body, Naruto thought to herself, so that's what it's like looking at my reverse sexy jutsu. Naruto shivered and put his arms to his chest, asking himself, is that what my sexy jutsu looks like? Naruto, Sasuke-kun. When they heard the voice, all three turned to see Sakura, Riser, and Ino approaching. Sakura started to say, listen, we got a situa, but stopped when she saw Naruto approaching them. She questioned, what's going on? Ino and Riser noticed the striking resemblance between Naruto and Naruto. Disbelieving, Ino exclaimed, it was Naruto's reverse sexy jutsu the whole time? She felt a surge of rage. With tears in her eyes, Ino wondered, so it was just Naruto playing a joke on me? Both Naruto and Naruto exclaimed, I have nothing to do with him, her, before exchanging glances and turning their heads. Sakura questioned no one in particular, how do we tell which one is telling the truth? Riser examined them closely. They looked remarkably alike, even perfectly mimicking each other's movements, but there was one difference. Sakura.san looked at his forehead. Sakura noticed a diamond mark of violet color on Naruto's forehead. Sakura realized, hey, you're right, Naruto doesn't have that mark. Riser said to Naruto, hey you, who are you really? I'm Uzumaki Naruto, believe it, says Naruto. Sakura thought, Uzumaki? Could he be related to Naruto? As she gazed at Naruto, he saw her gaze and gave her a wink, which made Sakura blush. Riser attracted everyone's attention by saying, now that we know it isn't one of Naruto's pranks, we can assume that he's the individual we're after. With an eyebrow raised, Naruto asked, what are you talking about? Riser gestured to Naruto and explained, the guards assigned to watch the entrance to the village were knocked out by an intruder and the description they gave of the individual matches him. Well, they wouldn't let me in the village and I didn't have time to wait until they contacted this Hokage person, so I used my sexy jutsu on them and they were out like a light. Naruto told them that it wasn't a big deal. Sakura yelled at him, looking shocked, are you out of your mind? Not at all concerned that what he did was an act of war, Naruto questioned, what's the big deal anyway? Sakura angrily yelled at him, the big deal is that you just can't go knocking out shinobi in someone else's village. Naruto informed them, but my parents are from this village. Sakura, who had somewhat calmed down, asked, your parents are leaf shinobi? Yeah, they're... Naruto paused in the middle of his statement, sensing something familiar, and his eyes widened as he turned to face the sky. Naruto hurriedly exclaimed, sorry, I have to go now, as he fled. Sakura yelled, hey get back here, as she ran after him. Naruto spoke up before the others could follow. Hey, what's that? Everyone turned to face the direction she was pointing, and their eyes widened in surprise as two enormous foxes, one gray and the other blonde, came descending from the sky. The foxes began to shrink as they approached Ino and her friends, and by the time they entered the village, they had transformed into humans. Hey, aren't they? Ino trailed off. Riser uttered incredulously, it can't be. The two humans land in front of the group of friends, one of whom is a stunning woman with a violet diamond on her forehead and blonde hair tied in two loose ponytails. The kanji for gamble is written in black within a red circle on the back of her grass, green haori. The broad, dark bluish gray obi that matches her equally blue pants holds her sleeveless gray kimono style blouse in place underneath it. However, her blouse is closed quite low, revealing a generous amount of cleavage. She has red nail polish on her toenails and fingernails and is dressed in high heels and open-toed, strappy black sandals. She has on red lipstick as well. Her companion is a tall man with two shoulder-length bangs framing both sides of his face and waist-length, spiky white hair tied in a ponytail. His eyes have red lines that run down them as well. He has a noticeable wart on the left side of his nose and is wearing a horned forehead protector that has the kanji for oil on it. He is dressed in a green short-sleeved kimono and matching pants, with mesh armor peeking out from the sleeves and legs. Handguards, a plain black belt, a traditional Japanese geta, a red haori with two plain yellow circles on either side, and a scroll on his back complete the ensemble. Jiraiya said, "I noticed that Konoha hasn't changed much since the last time I was here." Tsunade looked at Ino and her friends, who were just staring at them, and said, "You can take in the scenery after we find our son." After spotting Naruto, Tsunade approached her until she was directly in front of her. Nervously, Naruto said, Hi." The smiling Tsunade remarked, "You must be Kushina's girl." Naruto inquired, "Wait, are you my great-aunt Tsunade?" Tsunade replied, "Yes." Naruto then unexpectedly embraced her. Naruto exclaimed, "Wow, I've always wanted to meet you," with excitement. Tsunade gave her a hug in return and remarked, "It's great to meet you too." Ino pinched her cheek to make sure she wasn't dreaming and remarked, "I can't believe it, Lady Tsunade is right in front of me." Sasuke muttered, "So this is the land of fire's goddess, Lady Tsunade." He recognized Tsunade's unfathomable beauty and realized why the elemental nations referred to her as their most beautiful woman. He was also unable to look away from her striking bosom. Jiraiya put his left arm possessively around Tsunade's shoulder and said, "Hey brat, eyes where I can see em." In addition to Jiraiya glaring at him, Sasuke sees Naruto glaring at him and mouthing the word, "pervert." Tsunade smiles and asks, "Jiraiya-kun, are you feeling jealous?" With his head held high, Jiraiya tells her, "Of that brat? No way, but I'm not going to let someone gawk at my woman." Tsunade laughs. Everyone else is observing the exchange, unsure of how to interpret it, but Tsunade pauses her laughter and turns to face the group, particularly Ino. Tsunade lowered her head and gave Ino a scowling look as she approached her and stopped directly in front of her, intimidating her. Tsunade's eyes dilate as she realizes, this girl. I sense something odd about her. And her scent. It couldn't be. She turns to Jiraiya. With no room for debate, she commanded, "Jiraiya, we must find our son right now." Jiraiya nodded rapidly as Tsunade sprinted past him, and he did the same. To no one in particular, Sasuke asked, "What just happened?" Not unnoticed, Ino kept staring in the direction that Tsunade and Jiraiya had left. With concern, Riser said, "Ino-san, is something wrong?" Huh? Ino turned to Riser, leaping with surprise. "You seem distracted." Ino laughed and said, "Oh, I'm fine, I'm just in disbelief that I got to meet the goddess and up close no less." Riser seemed satisfied by that and went to speak with Naruto, but Ino was bothered by something. "When I looked into Lady Tsunade's eyes, it was as if I was looking into Naruto-kun's eyes." Ino nodded. "No, it couldn't be that they're related, could they?" Ino was thinking. Sakura screamed, "Stop running," as she ran after Naruto through the rooftops. Naruto thought to himself, she sure is persistent. Then he had a flash of inspiration, leapt to the street, and began charging through the clouds. As Sakura leapt from the rooftops and pursued Naruto, she thought, you're not getting away that easily. Sakura was still pursuing Naruto when he turned around and smirked as he made his way to an alley. Sakura hurried to catch up, but as she turned the corner, she felt a hand grab her shoulders and draw her away. She felt a pair of arms encircle her waist as her back struck a hard object. Sakura felt a chill go down her spine when Naruto whispered, "Gotcha," in her ear. "Release me." Sakura strained to free herself and demanded. Sakura's body shook as Naruto whispered in her ear, "I don't think so, I kind of like holding you like this." "What's going on with me?" thought Sakura as Naruto began to gently blow air at Sakura's ear, causing her to shudder. Stop it. What should I stop? While continuing to gently blow air into Sakura's ear, Naruto posed the question. S. Stop acting like this. Sakura's breathing became labored, but she managed to say it. Naruto complied, saying, okay. Sakura let out a sigh of relief, oblivious to Naruto's cheeky grin as he lowered his head to kiss her neck. Hey, shocked, Sakura said. What? As he nuzzled Sakura's neck, Naruto remarked, I'm not doing what you told me to do earlier. Sakura blushed and told him, that doesn't mean you can nuzzle my neck. She had to admit that it felt nice. After catching a glimpse of her flushed face out of the corner of his eye, Naruto boldly tried a kiss between Sakura's neck and collarbone, causing the girl in his arms to jump with surprise. What are you up to? Sakura's face was flushed as she yelled. Sakura's body trembled every time Naruto kissed her neck, and her legs began to feel like jelly. Naruto ignored her and kept kissing her neck, until he kissed a particular spot on her neck that made her gasp, which made Naruto smile. Naruto planted another kiss on her sweet spot and said, I think I found your sweet spot. As Naruto continued to play with her sweet spot, Sakura's eyes were rolled up to the back of her head. She felt a fire ignite inside of her, and it spread throughout her body. To finish the game, Naruto felt Sakura's body growing hotter, so he released his hold on her. Sakura immediately turned around and pinned Naruto to the wall behind him. Naruto was surprised, but then grinned when he saw the lustful eyes of Sakura as she held him by his shoulders. As he raised his right hand to caress the left side of Sakura's face, he thought, just a little more. Sakura leaned into his touch, her eyes never leaving his, and then abruptly, without warning, she leapt at Naruto and smashed her lips against his. Naruto was startled when he felt Sakura's tongue invade his mouth, but he quickly overcame it and began fighting Sakura's tongue with his own. As they continued their lip lock, Sakura felt something spread through her body from the kiss. Naruto moved his hands from her hips and groped her, causing her to moan during the kiss. They had to part reluctantly because of the lack of air, leaving a trail of saliva connecting their mouths. Sakura was panting, and her heart was racing. When Naruto heard a commotion from the street, he thought, I just got down here and I already found 4 amazing women, just like how Chan found 2.san. He peered around the corner and his eyes widened when he saw his mother approaching him with his father right behind her. The crowd around them made room for them, and they bowed their heads in greeting. They found me already? As Sakura rested her head on his chest, Naruto complained, I'd better sneak away or else I'll cut our visit short and bring you back home and never let you out again. When he heard that voice, Naruto froze, and he slowly craned his neck upward to see his mother standing on the wall's side, staring down at him with her arms crossed and her eyes narrowed. Chan. Hello, Naru-chan. Tsunade said this to her son in a frustrated manner, but then she saw Sakura in Naruto's arms. She leapt from the wall and landed in front of them, and while Sakura was still holding her head on Naruto's chest and her eyes were wide-eyed, Tsunade watched her closely before her eyes widened and she collected chakra in her right hand and held it against Sakura's forehead. After blinking twice, Sakura's dazed expression started to fade, and she looked around in confusion before noticing her. Sakura just stared at her, her mouth hanging open, while Tsunade smiled and said, that should help clear your head. As for you. Tsunade turned back to Naruto, saying, you're in serious trouble, mister. Before they were swallowed up by a dazzling light and disappeared, she seized Naruto by his hood and yanked him away from Sakura. He's really done it now. The new voice took Sakura by surprise, and she turned to face Jiraiya. Where did you come from? She let out a shriek. I hope you haven't already made plans with that young man. I didn't mean to surprise you, young lady. As Tsunade abruptly reappeared, Jiraiya informed her, because it appears he'll be busy. Baka, move quickly. As she took Jiraiya by the front of his kimono and vanished, Tsunade gave an order. Today definitely didn't turn out like how I expected, Sakura said aloud as she left the alley, staring at the location where they used to be and pressing her right hand to her head. Tsunade, Jiraiya, and Naruto were directly in front of Minato, who was seated on his desk back at the Hokage Tower with a beaming Kushina by his side. I apologize sincerely for the trouble my son has caused. Tsunade bowed and forced Naruto to follow suit. Minato assured Tsunade, it's okay, there was no real harm done. Chan, Naruto began, looking at his mother. I didn't do anything, ba. Tsunade interrupted him by pushing his head back down. He obeyed Tsunade's harsh instruction, not another word out of you. Oh my auntie, Naruto-kun definitely takes after you, Kushina said, laughing at their exchange. Tsunade muttered, PFT, he takes more after his father if you ask me. Well, that is true that he does have a bit of Jiraiya in him, but his personality and facial features are definitely from you. In fact, I remember stories from Lady Mito about how much of a handful you were when you were little and that you snuck away to visit the leaf on your birthday and caused quite a commotion. Kushina clarified. She did? Naruto raised his head once more and asked. Yes, your mother was a major source of trouble. Kushina grinned as she said to Naruto, Lady Mito told me that on that day alone your mother accumulated a large amount of depth. Depth? Confused, Naruto asked. You were unaware? Kushina started to say, your mother used to ga, but was cut off when Tsunade covered her mouth. Kushina closed her eyes, grinned, and nodded as Tsunade whispered, he doesn't need to know that. Though Jiraiya was aware that Tsunade didn't want Naruto to know about her gambling habit, Naruto raised an eyebrow at his mother's strange behavior but dismissed it. Have you found your mate, Naruto-kun? Kushina inquired naively. What? Tsunade let out a shriek. She was informed by Naruto, I believe I did. Naruto, what do you mean by that? Tsunade gave a hysteric shout. How lovely, exactly like your mom. Who is the fortunate woman, then? Kushina inquired inquisitively. Well, Naruto started, looking at his mother, who appeared to be on the verge of losing it. I meet 4 amazing and pretty girls. Naruto finished with a big smile, and Tsunade's face instantly turned red as her temper reached a boiling point. But I didn't get a chance to mark them. Tsunade's anger started to subside a little at the sound of this. Well, don't worry about it, Naruto-kun. You've already poured your chakra into them, so they're off limits to every male now. Kushina replied to him. Really? Naruto smiled and asked. Yes, your mother told you, didn't she? They all turned to face Tsunade, who was looking nervously away when Kushina asked. You see, whenever a member of our family finds a mate and we didn't mark them yet, we pour our chakra into them, usually through a kiss, to alert everyone that they're already taken. Kushina elaborates. According to Naruto, cool. But there are certain problems that go with it. Tsunade started talking about them. You see, Naru-chan, our chakra is very potent, and if a human comes into contact with it, they can get hurt. When Naruto hears this, his eyes enlarge. But if your chakra is so dangerous, how can you heal people? He questioned his mom. As she pointed to the violet diamond mark on her forehead, she began, that's because I have full control of my chakra and the jutsus I use are designed to heal others. This mark which I use to store my chakra is proof that I have complete control of my chakra. Naruto reached up with his right hand to touch the diamond mark on his forehead. However, our chakra specifically reacts to our emotions. Tsunade concludes by looking at Jiraiya. And when we're feeling happy or relaxed, our chakra reflects that by transferring that feeling into others, especially our partner. And when we're feeling angry or stressed, our chakra becomes dangerous to others, especially humans, she said, as Naruto nodded his head. So what's wrong with me channeling my chakra into my partners once more? Naruto inquires. Tsunade, gritting her teeth, clarified that Naruto had referred to the girls as his mates, saying, the problem is that you can actually cause them to be aroused, or in your case make the girls go into heat. That's why your mother channeled her chakra into that girl, to calm down her ragging hormones, since you're young and your chakra is much more potent on a young lady who's starting to become a woman. Jiraiya went on to explain. Did Tucson experience something similar? Did he ask? PFT hardly. Your father was already a pervert long before I met him, much less when I poured my chakra into him. Tsunade laughed. Jiraiya retorted, drawing a glare from Tsunade, like you're one to talk. You started hounding after every pretty boy you encountered when you snuck into the village after our encounter. Tsunade retorted, I don't need to hear that from a so-called super pervert. In response, Jiraiya said, takes one to know one. I'm not a pervert. Tsunade yelled. Oh, I see. Well, I seem to remember a time when you peeked on Maya. Jiraiya was shocked when Tsunade covered his mouth with hers and quickly inserted her tongue into his mouth, but before he could respond, Tsunade broke off the kiss. What did you intend to say? Tsunade asked, giving him a seductive look. Jiraiya said sheepishly, I don't know, but it's starting to come back to me. Tsunade kissed him again, and this time Jiraiya kissed him more deeply and put his arms around Tsunade's waist. Kushina grinned at their show of love and looked at Minato, while Naruto felt disgusted by his parents having sex in front of him. All right, stop this now. As they both broke off their kiss, Naruto reminded them, aren't we supposed to be introduced to the village and then spend time as a family? You're right, we should use this time wisely before we go back home and lock you away, Tsunade replied. Indeed, we shoulda what? Looking at his laughing mother as she leaves the room, Naruto exclaims, hey, come back, you didn't mean that, right? Jiraiya follows Naruto as he runs after his mother. Kushina told her husband, with them around, things should be even more lively. As he and Kushina walked out of the office, Minato sighed, "Yes, but I'm afraid it'll just cause me trouble." Soon after, the entire village gathered in the village square to meet the goddess Tsunade and her family. The crowd was thrilled to see their goddess, but the clan heads were most thrilled because they saw it as an opportunity to rise in the village's social hierarchy and influence. "Isn't it amazing that we're going to meet the goddess?" With excitement, a girl with black hair tied in two Chinese-style buns said. Beside her, a young man with long back hair says, "Calm yourself, Tenten. Come on, Neji. You must be a little thrilled to see Tsunade, the goddess." Tenten shakes hands with her teammate. "Neji, she is correct, and now is the moment to display your youthful energy." Their vivacious friend with thick eyebrows and bold-cut black hair yelled. "You see? Why can't I feel Lee's excitement?" Tenten informed him. The thought of Neji becoming like Lee made him perspire. "I'd rather not." Neji glared at Kiba as he laughed, saying, "You'd definitely look weird if you started acting like Lee." Reprimanding her teammate, Hinata said, "Now Kiba-kun, that wasn't nice." Ino said, "Yeah, you do a good enough job of being like Lee." "How does that mean anything?" Kiba addressed Ino. Now we must remember that this is S joyous occasion and that Lee.san is showing great spirit," Riser stated to his companions. "Indeed, Riser has a good idea." Naruto added, "Let's enjoy the festival and limit the insults." "Are you right, Sasuke-kun?" With a bored tone, Sasuke said, "Whatever. Are you still acting like that?" Before turning her attention to Sakura, who was unusually quiet, Naruto said to him, "Is something wrong, Sakura?" "What?" Sakura gave Naruto a startled look. Naruto tells her, "You seem to be in your own world." Sakura informed her, "Oh, I just have a lot on my mind. Would you mind sharing?" With courtesy, Sakura tells her, "No, I'd rather not." "Are you sure?" Naruto asks, her fox ears peeking out a little as she smiles mischievously. "Yes, without a doubt." Knowing full well that Naruto's ears popping up can only mean trouble, Sakura told her with conviction. Naruto turned to face Temari and shrugged, "If you say so." "Temari, how about you?" She asks the Sand Kunoichi, noticing that her face is a little flushed and her breathing is labored. "You look about as lost as Sakura." As she attempts to regain her composure, Temari assures her, "I'm fine." A young man with black hair that reached his shoulders and was pulled back in a spiky ponytail said, "Probably just spent a little too long in the sun." A young man with spiky brown hair said, "I think you spend too much time under the sun, Shikamaru." "Choji, which side are you on?" his best friend is asked by Shikamaru. The Hokage begins speaking to the crowd from the top of the Hokage tower just before he can reply, saying, "Hello everyone, I'm glad that you're all participating in this wonderful day when our goddess visits the leaf." The crowd cheers and Minato waits a little before continuing. "It has been a long time since she's graced the village with her presence and she's honored us by bringing her family with her as well." The crowd cheered once more, and immediately after that, Minato gave them a gift. "Our goddess lady Tsunade Uzumaki." As Minato moved aside to let Tsunade address the crowd, the audience let out a loud cheer. The crowd cheered as Tsunade said, "Hello everyone. It seems like yesterday that I last saw you with my parents and was introduced to the village. But this time, it will be my turn to introduce you all to my child, who turned 16 today." The audience roars with applause. "Now, let me introduce my son, Naruto Uzumaki." The audience roars with applause as Naruto approaches his mother. "Hey everyone, good to meet you all." When Naruto welcomes the crowd, they roar with applause. 4 girls in the crowd, however, just stared in shock at the realization that the young man they met was their goddess son. "He is the son of Lady Tsunade." Sakura, Temari, Ino, and Hinata all blurted out. As Naruto waved to the applauding crowd, Sakura, Ino, Hinata, and Temari simply stared at him with wide eyes. "He is our goddess's son." Still not convinced that Naruto could be the son of their great goddess, Sakura spoke aloud. "Who would possess that?" Riser grinned and said. Before a smile gradually appeared on her face, Ino whispered, "He's Lady Tsunade's son." "Yes." Gazing at Naruto, she mentally exulted, "I hit the jackpot." "Is he a god?" Hinata said before passing out. "Hinata." Kiba hurried to her aid and worriedly called out her name. "This isn't good." Temari swallowed, feeling a strange feeling inside herself. The son of the goddess that rules over the land of fire. So he's the son of Great Aunt Tsunade, huh? Naruto didn't ask anyone in particular. Not impressed, Sasuke remarked, "He's a dope. Don't say that, Sasuke-kun, or else you'll receive divine punishment." Naruto issued a warning. Sasuke remained steadfast in his opinion of Naruto, saying, I don't care, I think he's a dope. Suit yourself. Just don't come crying to me when Great Aunt Tsunade punishes you for insulting her son. Naruto cautioned him. Tsunade grinned at her son as Naruto made his way back to his mother's side at the Hokage Tower. So, are you ready to celebrate your birthday, Naru-chan? You're right. Naruto smiled in response. Both of them turned to go, but Kaharu Udatane and Homura Mitokado, two village council members, blocked their way. Kaharu was greeted with a bow and told, It is an honor to have you in the village again, Lady Tsunade. Homura bowed and added, And we are especially honored that you brought your family with you. Kaharu, Homura. Tsunade narrowed her eyes and spoke to them indifferently, I see you two haven't changed. The same cannot be said about you, milady. It appears the years have been really kind to you. Homura offered a compliment. Tsunade said authoritatively, Thank you for the compliment, but if it's okay with you, I'd like to spend some time with my family and show my son the village. She couldn't stand these two. Kaharu remarked, We understand, Maddie, that family is very important. Tsunade mused to herself, as if you would understand. We hope you enjoy your visit, also we would like to discuss with you matters concerning your son, Homura said. What's important? With a puzzled expression on his face, Naruto inquired. Well, Lord Naruto, we would like to assist you in finding a suitable mate, Kaharu responded. A partner? I already. There's nothing to talk about, we're heading home as soon as we're through here. Naruto was interrupted by Tsunade, who took hold of his wrist and dragged him with her as she passed Kaharu and Homura. Jiraiya shrugged and said, Well, you heard the lady. He then trailed behind his son and mate. Kaharu muttered, slightly annoyed, I guess her attitude still remains the same. We just got here and already those two are trying to push their own agenda on my son, Tsunade said, fumming as she walked down the hall of the tower with her son. And the nerve of them to do it in my presence, no less. Naruto yelled at his mother, Ka-chan, stop, as he attempted to prevent himself from tripping. Naruto was able to release his hand when Tsunade halted and her grip relaxed. What was that about? Naruto questioned his mom. When Tsunade turns around, Naruto is taken aback by the solemn look on her face. Listen, Naruto. Avoid those two as much as you can. She advised him not to speak to them unless she or his father were present. Now Naruto was even more perplexed. Why? Tsunade gently explained to him, because they might manipulate you into doing something you don't want to. However, why would they act in that way? Naruto inquired. As he walks up to them, Jiraiya says, for the good of the village. Tsunade sneered, more like to further their own agenda. Remember that we're here to celebrate Naruto's birthday, so don't let them agitate you, Tsunade. She was reminded by Jiraiya. To calm herself, Tsunade inhales deeply. With a poke to Naruto's nose, she said, You're right, let's forget about them for now. Today is all about you. This made him smile. Naruto asks her mother, So what did you want to talk to me about, Mom? She abruptly showed up behind her and escorted her to a nearby tea shop, away from her friends. As Kushina's fox ears emerged on top of her head, she said, I wanted to ask for your help in something. Tamari, meanwhile, was aimlessly strolling through the village while everyone else surrounding her was celebrating, playing games, laughing, and having a good time. Tamari thought uneasily, Another god has laid claim to me. Tamari then comes to the realization, this is unheard of, for a god of another nation to want a god of another. She mutters to herself, I'm not even a full god. She is revered as a goddess in her village, but Tamari-chan. When Tamari notices a young man with straight red hair coming toward her, she breaks out of her reverie. Do I know you? She asks, obviously perplexed that she would recognize this stranger. He stands in front of her and says, It's me, Naruto. Naruto? Tamari asked, raising an eyebrow, not believing him, but then she felt hot all over. Tamari shudders as he whispers in her ear, Yeah, me and my family are in disguise. What is causing my body to react to him? It's the same with. She looks into his eyes before slamming her lips into his and lunging at him. The sudden kiss surprises Naruto, who wraps his arms around her and kisses her back as he feels Tamari's tongue probe his mouth. Their tongues fight for control as Tamari runs her fingers through Naruto's red hair, turning it back to its golden hue. Naruto's hands roam around Tamari's body before stopping on her ass, where he gives it a firm squeeze that makes her moan in the kiss. As the kiss heats up and Tamari senses a change in herself, someone snatches the back of her blouse and yanks her away from Naruto and throws her against the side of a nearby building. You hussy! Stop touching my son! An irate woman with red hair that is spiky and dressed elegantly in a kimono yells. Take care of yourself. Tamari yells back through half-lidded eyes, annoyed at being interrupted. She pushes herself off the wall and walks up to the angry woman. Are you aware of who I am? I am the land of wind's goddess. Tamari grinned triumphantly as the red-haired woman's eyes widened, but her scowl returned when she was abruptly engulfed in smoke, revealing her true identity. Well, I am the goddess of the land of fire, she retorted. The most well-known goddess of all the elemental nations was standing in front of Tamari, and after examining her closely, Tamari confirmed that her title as the most beautiful woman in the world was well-earned because she had a body that was appropriate for a goddess of her size. Tamari glanced at Naruto and saw that he was no longer wearing a disguise. Then she narrowed her eyes and turned back to Tsunade. I'll say it again, mind your own business. It is my son's business, Tsunade yelled, her teeth sharpening and her eyes narrowing. Then pay attention, Tamari retaliated by making her pupils resemble a black four-pointed star with 4 black dots surrounding it, then turning into slits, which startled Tsunade. Observing her reaction, Tamari launched an attack by generating a powerful gust of wind in front of her. Tsunade raised her arms in front of her to shield herself from the fierce wind, but Tamari saw this and sprang forward, pushing Tsunade to the ground before pushing her away and moving toward Naruto, who was taken aback by what had just transpired. Tamari grabbed Naruto's arm as she summoned her fan and leapt into the air. Then she and Naruto sat on her fan, riding the air current away from Tsunade. Come back here, please. Tsunade yells as she stands up and realizes they're quite far away. She kneels before jumping high into the air. What the devil was that about earlier, Tamari-chan? After a long period of silence, Naruto asks. I will not allow any other woman to be close to you. You are mine. Tamari tells him, I don't care who they say they are. She acted without thinking, and her logical side was raising an alarm, but it was swiftly dismissed when Tsunade landed on the fan. Did you truly believe you could avoid me? Tsunade bared her teeth and asked angrily. Go away from us. With her teeth bared, Tamari yelled angrily. Never. I'll never allow this village to take away what's precious to me again, Tsunade said, glancing at Tamari and the fact that she still had Naruto in her grasp. A second scene of a renegade shinobi clinging to a very young Naruto flashed before her eyes. She yelled angrily as she lifted her hand to slash Tamari with her claws, but she was tackled by something. Unfortunately, the sudden change in weight caused the fan to topple over, knocking off the remaining occupants. Jiraiya held on to Tsunade as they fell off the fan, saying, Tsunade, calm yourself. Tamari-chan. Naruto turned them so that his back was to the ground and called out her name while drawing her near. As soon as Tsunade notices this, her anger vanishes and is replaced by a different emotion. Naru-chan. She cries out to him in concern, and Jiraiya notices her smile as she turns to face him. Why in the world are you grinning? He says simply, look. As his mother, Tsunade shares a unique bond with Naruto that gives her special abilities, including the ability to feel what the other is feeling. This ability has helped her in important moments in the past, and the scene in front of her reminds her of the times her husband has put his body in danger to protect her. However, she wasn't going to allow her son to do the same, not under her watch. Before she could act, the wind began to pick up and gather below Naruto and Tamari, and when they made contact with it, it acted as a cushion that managed to slow them down enough to land gently on the ground. Did she do this? As she and Jiraiya landed a few feet away from them, Tsunade thought aloud. Jiraiya smiled and said, our son knows how to pick M. As she watched her son continue to cling to Tamari for dear life, Tsunade scowled and started to approach them, reflecting on what had transpired earlier. Her eyes. They were the eyes of the Shukaku, but then she trailed off, recalling how they turned into slits like hers. She finally stopped beside them, which made Naruto glance up at her. Ka-chan, I think. Tsunade interrupted him in a serious tone, saying, get away from her Naruto. What? Why? Confused, he asked. As she reached for Tamari, she told him, she's dangerous. She was taken aback when Naruto withdrew. What are you doing? She's not dangerous, she used her wind to stop us from falling, Naruto replied. She made an attempt to kidnap you, Tsunade countered. Naruto reassured her, she didn't mean any harm by it. How do you calculate? She raised an eyebrow in question. Because she's the first person I infused my chakra with when I came here, he stated to her. Tsunade's eyes enlarged with surprise. Why you, kidding, right? She stumbled uneasily. No, Naruto clarified, she's the first girl I met when I arrived, just like you met San. Tsunade started to say, Naru-chan, my encounter with your father was. but she stopped when she heard a muffled sound and turned to face Temari, who raised her head off Naruto's chest. She looked around in confusion, then up at Naruto and grinned. She opened her mouth to say something, but then she saw Tsunade and got up right away. "You still intend to obstruct our communication?" Temari challenged. "I suppose I must show you your place." That truly made Tsunade smile. "So you want to compete for the position of alpha?" "Exactly," with conviction, Temari said as she held out her left hand to the side. Her fan, which was perched on a tree branch, suddenly flew in her direction, and she managed to catch it on its side. As she assumed a combat stance, Tsunade grinned and said, "Fine by me, this was going to happen sooner or later." "Wait, Temari. Chan and Ka. Chan." As he stood up, Naruto called out to them, but before he could get close, a hand softly grasped his shoulder. Jiraiya told Naruto, "Hold on there, Naruto. This is one fight you can't intervene." Naruto's father was observing the two women when he turned around. "Why not?" Taking his eyes off the women, Jiraiya turned to his son and said, "Because this match is to decide who becomes the patriarch." "Already?" "Yes, normally this wouldn't occur until your vixen has been marked and has fully developed into a fox." As Temari and Tsunade leapt into the air, Jiraiya clarified, "But it seems that she was a goddess herself and challenged your mother." After crashing through multiple trees, Temari pushes Tsunade onto the ground, creating a deep trench several feet long before stopping away from the wadded area. Temari fully opens her fan and swings in front of her, unleashing a powerful gust of wind at Tsunade. Tsunade crossed her arms in front of her as she took the attack, sustaining multiple cuts on her arms, legs, and clothing. As she looked down at Tsunade, who was still holding her arms crossed, Temari scoffed, "Is that all there is to the goddess Tsunade?" Tsunade smirked as she uncrossed her arms and said, "HMPH, I should be asking you that. You arrogant cow." As she threw a punch at Tsunade, which she caught, Temari yelled, "I'm a vixen, and you're going to learn that whatever I say, goes." Tsunade yelled as she pushed Temari away with her right foot against her stomach. Temari got up and brushed herself off, her cuts disappearing as if they had never been there. "Why ought I to pay attention to you?" As she drew her fan back behind her, Temari yelled angrily. Tsunade explained, "Because whether I like it or not, my son has chosen you to be his mate and it's my duty to determine whether you have what it takes to lead our family." She brought her hand down, her index finger out against the ground, creating a large fissure that was headed towards Temari, who leapt into the air to avoid it. She swung her fan and released another powerful gust of wind at Tsunade, but Tsunade smirked as she stomped her right foot on the ground, blocking the wind. Tsunade mockingly told her, "That isn't always going to work." Tsunade's overconfidence irritated Temari, so she used the wind to launch herself at her while keeping her fan closed. Tsunade was still wearing a confident smirk, and she thought, "She's probably going to open her fan at the last minute." As Temari was closing in and about to swing her fan, Temari kept it closed, which surprised her a little, but she grabbed it with her right hand and said, "Using it as a blunt weapon isn't going to." Tsunade interrupted herself when she saw that the wind was covering her fan and that it was staring at her hand, creating a wind sphere with her in the center. Temari floated over to Tsunade and said, "Let's see you deal with this." Tsunade threw a punch at the wind barrier, saying, "That won't make any difference." However, her hand was cut almost instantly, so she had to quickly pull her fist back. Tsunade smiles mischievously as she gathers chakra to her hands and feet, and Jiraiya recognizes that look and knows that Tsunade is about to turn this around. She slaps and kicks the air spheres back at Temari, but they are now made of fire instead of wind, and when the fire spheres collided with the larger one, flames quickly spread from the points of impact and completely encased Temari in a ball of fire. "Smart thinking, you would have lost that hand for sure." Temari grinned as she extended her right hand forward, causing several smaller wind spheres to shoot out of the larger one. "Temari-chan!" Naruto lets out a worried cry. Expectantly, Tsunade watches the fireball for any sign of Temari, but she didn't have to wait long because the fireball started to move quickly in her direction. Tsunade held her ground, pulling back her right fist before punching the air in front of her, sending a powerful shockwave forward. The fireball was blown away, but Temari wasn't there, so she closed her eyes and started to sense her location. She noticed a chakra signature coming from the forest's edge, but something seemed strange about it. "Shukaku's chakra is what I'm feeling, but it shifts to one that resembles mine." Tsunade thought, "It's like I'm spotting another vixen." Just before a tree erupted from the forest's edge, she used her razor sharp claws to cut it to pieces while keeping her eyes closed. However, another tree appeared, and this time a powerful wind sliced it into multiple logs. As she maneuvered through a number of hand signals, Tsunade thought, "She's really keeping me on my toes." Fire style. Fireball Jutsu. She declared as she breathed out a massive fireball, burning the logs to ashes and continuing into the forest. Tsunade waits for any sign of Tamari, but after waiting several minutes she grows impatient. Okay, this has gone on long enough. She then slams her palms together and the forest started to come alive. She sensed Tamari moving through the forest before suddenly stopping. Tsunade was smirking as she saw Tamari being lifted over the treetops, tightly bound by wood. This match is over. No, I won't give in to you. As she fought to break free, Tamari yelled. With a tone of disappointment, Tsunade remarked, HMPH, I can't believe my son chose a woman like you. When she heard that Tamari had lost it, she whipped up a fierce windstorm that tore the wood that bound her to pieces, and then she flew toward Tsunade with her claws ready to tear her to pieces. Tsunade jumped to meet her, and she began to change. Her body was covered in blonde fur, her feet became more dog-like. A foxtail appeared from behind her, a pair of fox ears appeared on top of her head, and her face pushed out into a snout. Tsunade had changed into a scaled-down version of her giant fox form, but this time she was more human because her amazing curves were enhanced as her clothing stretched. She let out a powerful roar that knocked Tamari off balance, and Tsunade tackled her and slammed her into the ground. As Tsunade pinned Tamari, she gave the order, give up. Never. Tamari resisted as she fought to get away. You arrogant brat, why? Tsunade said in annoyance as she bared her sharp teeth. I will show you your place. She opened her jaws and was prepared to bite Tamari's neck, but just before she could sink her teeth in she smelled something off. This smell. Tsunade jerked her head back to gaze at Tamari, but her eyes widened when she recognized her friend Jiraiya instead of herself. Jiraiya gave her a wink and said, hey, good looking. Jiraiya. When Tsunade looked around and saw her son holding Tamari's bridal style, she was astounded and wondered why her partner was in Tamari's place. Naruto smiled and said to his mother, I'm sorry, Ka-chan, but I just couldn't take it any longer. Sighing, Tsunade couldn't help but smile because it was just like her Naruto. She opened her mouth to say something, but Jiraiya beat her to it. Well, I'm not complaining. Tsunade looked down and saw Jiraiya staring at her enormous breasts. Pervert. Tsunade said, trying to contain her smile. She got off Jiraiya and went back to her human form. As she approached her son, she saw Tamari dozing soundly in his arms. Let's take this young lady somewhere where she can rest. Jiraiya proposed, why don't we take her to your grandparents' house? Definitely not, Tsunade said. No, Naruto exclaimed with excitement, I want to go see great-grandpa and grandma's house. You see? Naruto wishes to leave, Jiraiya smiled. No, Tsunade remained steadfast in her choice. Naruto begged, his eyes a dreaded puppy dog, come on, please Ka-chan. Tsunade denied him, saying, no. In a hand gesture, Naruto created 5 shadow clones of himself, and they all changed into chibi foxes. They all gave her puppy dog eyes and uttered the words, please Ka-chan. When Naruto notices that Tsunade is exerting all of her willpower to resist, he strikes for the kill. The clones all change into toddler versions of themselves and gaze up at Tsunade in desperation. Please Ka-chan. As Tsunade joyfully gathered the Narutos in her arms and smothered them, that was all she could handle. Of course we'll go to my grandparents' house. As she rushed to her grandparents' house, Tsunade joyfully told them. Jiraiya and Naruto were following Tsunade when Jiraiya remarked, now that wasn't fair. Naruto looked at Tamari's sleeping face and said, hey, it's my birthday. Yamanaka house. A knock on Ino's door interrupted her search through her closet, which was filled with clothes strewn all over her room. No, not this one, she said, tossing another article of clothing behind her. May I enter, Ino? On the other side of the door, a female voice inquired. As she continued to search through her closet, Ino replied, sure, go ahead mom. When Ino's mother opened the door, she saw her daughter's disorganized room. I assumed you had already chosen your festival attire, she said, carrying a white box, as she entered Ino's room. Ino replied, still searching her closet, I did, but now I have to find one that's perfect for a date. Do you have a festival date? Startled, Ino's mother inquired. Yep, he told me to meet him later. Ino turned to her mother, who smiled broadly. She handed the box to Ino and said, I see, then it's a good thing I came by to give you this. After navigating the heap of clothing on the floor, Ino walked up to her mother and placed the box on her bed before opening it to reveal a gorgeous purple yukata with a floral design. It's gorgeous, Ino said, pulling the yukata out and holding it in front of her. Thanks, Mom. She put the yukata on her bed and hugged her mother. Ino's mother gave her daughter a hug in return, saying, You're welcome, sweetheart. Ino pulled away from her mother's embrace and said, "I'd better change into this quick or I'll be late." Ino's mother made a joke before they both burst out laughing, saying, "It's okay to be fashionably late, dear." While Ino was getting ready for her date, Tsunade was taking her family to her grandparents' house in another part of the village. Naruto was taking in the sights. This was his first time in a human village, and everything was so unfamiliar to him. Jiraiya and Tsunade would glance at Naruto and smile, saying, "He's completely in awe. Is he to blame? He lived his entire life imprisoned in our castle," Jiraiya informed her. As Tsunade looked at Naruto, her eyes grew softer. Did I deny him this opportunity? Tsunade thought, but then she remembered her brother's death, followed by the death of the man who helped her realize her feelings for Jiraiya before it was too late, Dan. Then she remembered the incident that made her despise the Leaf Village. Tsunade gritted her teeth at the memory, despite being her sworn duty to protect the Land of Fire and its inhabitants, and even though her grandfather, granduncle and her maid are from the Leaf Village, she couldn't love the village as much as them, for it has given her nothing but pain. Because of the village's arrogance as well as the other villages, the Great Destroyer awoke and laid waste to everything. Her little brother Nawaki wanted to help out, seeing it as his duty as the god of the Land of Fire and protect the village their grandfather loved. He snuck out of their castle and went to confront the destroyer head-on. He never stood a chance. She was devastated, and her sadness was reflected across the Land of Fire as storm clouds covered the sky for days. However, she knew that she couldn't stay sad forever, and that there were others who have suffered at the hands of the destroyer, so she took on full responsibilities as the goddess of the Land of Fire and worked closely with the Popol and helped rebuild their homes. Her presence helped boost everyone's spirits and made them work hard. It was at this time that she met Dan, who lost his little sister when the destroyer attacked the Leaf Village. Tsunade remembered fondly the time they spent together, either discussing about the recovery efforts, where the destroyer was currently located, or just plain hanging out. For a moment she thought that maybe Dan was the mate she had been searching for, but the more time she spent with Dan, the less time she spent with Jiraiya, and they started to drift apart. Tsunade's heart ached remembering the pained look on Jiraiya's face when she told him she had plans with Dan. She then recalled on their way back from a mission on the outskirts of a megacure where she was accompanied by Jiraiya and Orochimaru. They were confronted by 3 orphans, one of which demanded they teach them ninjutsu. To her shock, Jiraiya agreed to teach them and told her and Orochimaru to go back without him. Despite not agreeing with his decision to stay, she reluctantly left. It was during the time that he stayed with the 3 orphans she began to yearn for Jiraiya's company. Even when she was out with Dan, she would get herself drunk and complain about Jiraiya. It was obvious to Dan how much she missed him. After 3 years have gone by and with no sign of Jiraiya, she fell into a depression. The villagers were beginning to worry about their goddess. Then one day Dan casually asked her to take a walk with him so she could get some fresh air. Tsunade reluctantly agreed, and it was during the walk that Dan dropped a bomb on her by asking her about what her feelings for Jiraiya were. Tsunade smiled slightly as she remembered her younger self scoffing at that and telling him that she felt nothing for that pervert. But Dan then mentioned how whenever she brought her home after getting drunk, she would call out Jiraiya's name in her sleep. Tsunade smiled, remembering how she tried to deny it, but Dan kept pushing the subject until she honestly told him that she doesn't know what her feelings for Jiraiya are. Dan asked her to elaborate, and she would explain that her feelings for Jiraiya were mixed. When he's here he always annoys her and they constantly argue, but now that he's not she feels this void in her heart. Dan only smiled and told her that she should listen to her heart before deciding to leave Tsunade alone. She remembered how she went to sit on top of the Hokage monument, and as she watched the setting sun her mind was made up. She met up with Dan to tell him about her conclusion. Dan was happy and the two shared a hug, but then Tsunade's frowned a little as she recalled how at that moment Jiraiya would show up. She remembered the look in his eyes, a look that he felt betrayed and heartbroken. She tried to explain that it wasn't what he thought, but Jiraiya turned around and ran. She chased after him and desperately called out to him, but then a loud roar was heard and they both stood frozen in their tracks as they recognized that roar. She suddenly leaps high into the air to get a better view, and sure enough, out in the distance beyond the village gates she sees the destroyer. She recalls the rage she felt building within her as her eyes immediately become slits and she flies off towards the destroyer. She transforms into her giant fox form and engages the destroyer in battle. However, despite a fierce battle, she was defeated and reverted to her human form as she crashed into the forest that surrounded the Leaf Village. She recalls how badly injured she was as she lay on the ground, feeling the ground tremble as the destroyer approached her location. She closed her eyes and waited to be reunited with her brother, but when that moment never arrived, she opened them to see the destroyer sinking into mud. Jiraiya landed next to her and proceeded to pick her up and carry her bridal style, jumping from tree branch to tree branch in an attempt to put as much distance between them as possible. However, there was an explosion behind him, and the force of the blast blew them away, and they were on a collision course with a large tree. Jiraiya manipulated his body so that he would take the hit, even taking the impact when he hit the ground and using his body to protect Tsunade from the debris caused by the explosion. When Jiraiya struck the tree trunk, Tsunade recalled hearing a cracking sound, and she said that multiple pieces of wood were embedded in his back. "What's wrong, Haim?" Jiraiya interrupted Tsunade's train of thought with her question. Tsunade smiled and said, "Nothing, I was just remembering how I realized my love for you. If I had known that all it would take to win your heart was putting my life on the line for you, I would have done it years ago," Jiraiya replied with a grin. Tsunade grinned, but as soon as she detected a familiar scent, she scowled. Jiraiya saw her expression and understood right away what it meant. Tsunade seized Jiraiya and Naruto, encircled them in a golden light, and then vanished. As he looked around, a man with bandages covering his right arm and part of his face said, I was informed that she was around here. Senju House. Naruto glanced around the room in confusion before turning to face his mother when Tsunade and her family reappeared in the living room section of her grandparents' house. "Hey, what's the big deal, Chan?" Tsunade had a serious tone as she told her son, "Listen, Naru-chan, before we go out we need to explain certain things to you." Naruto gave a nod. "Alright, but where should I leave Temari-chan?" Tsunade led him up the stairs to one of the spare bedrooms and said, "Follow me. Put her in here for the time being." Before leaving the room, Naruto brushed a flyaway hair from Temari's face and carefully laid her down on the mattress. He went to the dining room with his parents, where his mother sat at the head of the table, his father sat to her right, and he sat next to her left. Tsunade asks her son, "Naru-chan, remember those two people I told you to stay away from?" The answer from Naruto was, "Yeah. There's one more person you should be very careful around, his name is Danzo Shimura. He's also a part of the council like Homura and Kaharu," Tsunade said. Naruto nodded in response to Jiraiya's question. "However, Danzo is the most problematic of the two. You remember how we explained to you how the Anbu backups serve directly under the Hokage? Well, Danzo created his own faction of Anbu which he calls Root." Naruto questioned, "Why would he do that?" "He created Root to do missions that he believes were for the good of the village, and what the third Hokage, our sensei, didn't want to deal with," Tsunade clarified. "Your sensei?" inquired Naruto. Jiraiya clarified, "Sarutobi Hiruzen trained your mom, me, and another teammate of ours. Although technically he only trained me after I came to the village during my birthday," Tsunade continued. Anyway, Danzo's ideas clashed with the third Hokage, who believed in solving things through discussion, while Danzo believed eliminating the problem entirely, Jiraiya continued. "So because he didn't like how the third Hokage did things, he went behind his back and made his own group that will..." Naruto hesitated. "Yes, he recruited others into Root who shared his way of thinking. In fact, he even tried to recruit me," Tsunade stated to her son. Naruto's eyes widened as he asked, "Really?" His mother had never said that to him before. "Yes, it was after I lost my brother that he approached me and told me he wanted to help me make sure what happened to my brother never happened to anyone else. Sarutobi Sensei had already taken me under his wing by then, so I declined his offer, but that didn't stop him from trying to push his views on me. He even tried to get me to choose shinobi that he picked himself to be my mate." Tsunade recalled her supposed suitors with disdain. That someone would attempt to coerce his mother into doing something against her will shock Naruto. Naruto sighed in relief as Tsunade, who could sense what was on her son's mind, said, "Don't worry, I didn't give any of them a chance." He didn't like the thought of his mother hanging around with a man, even if they were friends. Tsunade grinned when she saw Naruto sigh. Her son was always just as protective of her as she was of him. From the corner of her eye, she saw that Jiraiya was not pleased to hear that either. She reached for his hand beneath the table and gave it a comforting squeeze, which caused Jiraiya to smile. "Eventually Danzo realized that I wouldn't sway to his way, and after I choose your father as my mate he began to resent me. Just because you wouldn't do what he says, he starts to hate you. That's stupid," Naruto growled. Tsunade clarified, "Danzo wants us and he will use any means to get it." Naruto questioned, "Why does he want us for?" Tsunade informs him, "He wants our influence over the Land of Fire to shape it how he wants." His parents fell silent as Naruto said, "Like hell he's going to get us to do what he wants. I'm surprised he hasn't tried kidnapping one of us since he's so desperate for our power." Naruto looks at his parents bewildered. Jiraiya winced in agony as Tsunade looked down at him, her fists clenched tightly as she crushed his hand. Tsunade quickly let go of his hand and apologized. Naruto asked, "Why did you two suddenly get quiet?" which made them both turn away. Tsunade started to say, well, you see, as her eyes glowed, it appears that Shukaku's descendant has woken up. Tsunade sighed as her eyes stopped glimmering. As he got up from the table and went upstairs, Naruto exclaimed, Tamari, Chan's awake. Awesome, I'll go check on her. Tsunade laid her forehead on the table and sighed with relief. Jiraiya half said, you really didn't want to tell him, huh? And half asked. Without raising her gaze, Tsunade answered, HMPH. How can you expect a mother to tell her child how she failed to keep him safe? Tsunade, you didn't. Whoa. When Tsunade hears Naruto's voice, her head leaps to her feet and she runs up the stairs, swiftly arriving at Temari's room and opening the door. She starts to say, Naru-chan, are you Auri? But stops herself when she sees what she's seeing. Tamari is on top of Naruto as he lies on the bed, kissing him passionately while feeling his firm abs over his undershirt with her hands under his hoodie. Just what do you think you're doing in my house? Tamari looked at a furious Tsunade after breaking her kiss with Naruto. Before kissing Naruto once more, she said to Tsunade, do you mind coming back later? We're kinda busy. Tsunade approached them after rolling up her right sleeve, but she noticed a strange odor. As she searched for the source of the smell, she asked herself, what's with this smell? A moan directed her attention back to the people in the bed. After flipping Tamari over so she was lying on the bed, Naruto took hold of her hands and interlaced their fingers before pressing his powerful chest against hers, making her groan as he kissed her. It's them. They're releasing their pheromones. Tsunade exclaims as her eyes enlarge. Tamari moaned with pleasure as she craned her neck to give Naruto better access, but he broke off his kiss after trailing kisses down her neck. When he was pulled back, Naruto was ready to bite down after opening his mouth to reveal his enlarged canines and kissing a spot between Temari's neck and collar. When her son reaches out to Tamari, Tsunade responds, oh no you don't, you can't mark her yet. Tamari screams, Naruto-kun, as she leaps from the bed. When Tsunade placed herself between them, she commanded, back off. Tamari-chan, Naruto-kun. As they frantically tried to get past Tsunade, they both called out to one another. Tsunade demands, knock it off. The pheromones that are leaking from their bodies are so potent that they nearly overpower her senses. She thinks to herself, damn teenage hormones, I don't remember being like this at their age. Maybe it's because she's a goddess herself. Then she hears a noise and turns to see Jiraiya writing in his notebook. As he writes, Jiraiya murmurs to himself. The two lovers cry out to each other, yearning to be together, however an unstoppable force threatens to keep them apart. This isn't the time to be doing that, Tsunade yells at her partner. Come on, this is gold, I think it'll be my next bestseller, he says to her. When Tsunade yells, give me a hand here, Jiraiya rushes to her aid. Naruko, meanwhile, is stumbling around the village trying to find Tsunade and her family. She glanced around, wondering, now where could they be? She was about to head to Tsunade's place when she noticed a familiar face. Meh, I guess I'll head to her house, maybe she's there. As she recalls what her mother told her, she rambles, hey it's. Her fox ears appear on top of her head, and she smiles mischievously. Tsunade has successfully calmed Naruto and Tamari back at the Senju home, but their pheromones are still active, and unlike Sakura, she is unable to control Temari's. Tamari and Naruto are seated in the love seat in the living room, with Temari's arms wrapped around Naruto's right arm and her head resting on his shoulder. Tsunade is seated on a graceful armchair that was once used by the Uzumaki clan's matriarchs. Her grandmother used to sit in this chair whenever she and her younger brother came to visit her and sat on her knees while she told them stories. And it was hers now. Before returning her attention to Naruto and Tamari, she glances to her right, where Jiraiya was standing beside her. Naruto asked abruptly, why can't I mark her yet, Ka-chan? Tsunade remarked, in this case Naru-chan, it isn't that simple. Incredulous, he asked, what do you mean? Tamari said, it's because I'm a goddess from another land. Yes, there has never been a situation where the god of one land has chosen the god of another to marry. Tsunade said. Since Tamari is the goddess of the land of wind, you have to travel to the major village there, which is Sanagakure. Once there you have to inform the Kazekage that you want to take Tamari as your mate. Naruto remarked, that's all? Sounds easy enough. According to Tamari, don't bet on it. She raised her head off Naruto's shoulder to gaze at his parents. In the land of wind, it is customary for the daughter of the family to marry the head of the family and for her future husband to challenge him to prove himself worthy. Everyone's eyes widened as she concluded, resting her head on Naruto's shoulder. My parents passed away a couple years ago, so the one in charge of my family is the true heir of Shukaku, and current Kage of Suna is my youngest brother, Gara of the desert. So I have to fight her brother, who is also the god of the land of wind. But what did Tamari-chan meant by true heir? Naruto pondered. Before Tsunade heard a knock on the door, she thought, perfect, things can't get any worse. As he went to answer the door, Jiraiya said, I'll get it. He was aware that only a small number of people could actually know where this place was located, let alone get past the special neighborhood. He opened the door to find Naruto grinning at him. She gave him a warm greeting, saying, Hi Uncle Jiraiya. Jiraiya smiled and returned the greeting, Hey kiddo. Naruto gestured beside her and said, I hope you don't mind me coming by, and I brought a friend with me. Jiraiya ushered them in, saying, Well, not at all, please come in. She said, Thanks, and went inside. When she said Naruto, Tsunade got up from her seat because she could hear the door closing. Naruto-chan, what a surprise. She said, Hey auntie, before focusing on Tamari and Naruto, sup cuz. Naruto returned the greeting with a slightly awkward, hey. She simply stepped aside to reveal a young woman of her age wearing a purple flower patterned yukata, saying, I know our first meeting was kinda weird, but I brought someone to make up for it. The young woman bowed lightly and said, Hello milady, it's an honor to meet you. Ino-chan? Exclaimed Naruto in shock. To speak to Naruto, Ino raised her head. She approached him and took a seat on his lap, saying, Hello, Naruto-kun. She said, I hope you don't mind me visiting. Then, shocking everyone except Naruto, she planted a passionate kiss on his lips. That's my boy, Jiraiya exclaimed with pride. Tsunade watched Ino kiss her son in front of her and thought angrily, there's another one? As her fox ears appeared on top of her head, Naruto thought, Mom is right, this is going to be fun. Tsunade was shocked to see that her son was being kissed by another girl. On the other hand, Jiraiya is extremely proud of his son, who is being pursued by two stunning blondes. Withdrawing from the kiss, Ino turned to look at Tsunade. Ino rose and bowed once more in a respectful manner before turning back to face Tsunade. It is a great honor to meet our land's goddess in person. I knew beforehand about your legendary beauty milady, but the stories clearly don't do you justice, as you were even more beautiful than I could have even imagined, she said. Tsunade smiled and said, Why thank you, she was grateful for the compliment. Looking back at Naruto, Ino remarked, I can see where Naruto-kun gets most of his looks from. Smiled shyly, Tsunade said, Ah geez, you're just saying that. She turns to face Jiraiya and says, As well as yours, Master Jiraiya. I am not milady, he clearly inherited your looks. With a slight smile, Jiraiya said, I see you've heard of me. Ino smiled and said, Who hasn't heard of the man who stole our goddess's heart? Gazing affectionately at Tsunade, Jiraiya remarked, PFT, more like she stole mine. Naruto chuckled as he watched. As she watched Ino continue to praise them, she thought, Ino is winning them over with flattery. Then she turned to Tamari. As Ino asks, What brings you here, Tamari? Tamari answered irritably, I would like to ask you the same question. With a smile, Ino answered, Naruto-kun is going to take me out to see the festival. He's what? Exclaimed Tamari and Tsunade. With a smile on her face, Ino said, Naruto-kun asked me out when we met a little while ago. Oh really? Tsunade asked, turning to face Naruto, who was sheepishly scratching the back of his head. Naruto turned to face Tamari and suddenly realized, Ino-chan was the second girl I talked to since I came to the village. Tamari-chan, I want to apologize for how I acted when I met you. What do you mean? Tamari asked, blinking bewilderedly. I was too forward and made you uncomfortable instead of giving you space and showing you the proper respect a woman deserves. Naruto clarified. Surprised, Tamari couldn't contain her smile. She looked at Ino as a thought came to her, then said, It's okay, Naruto-kun, I forgive you. But if you want to make it up to me, then how about you take me out on a date? Sure thing. Naruto said without hesitation. Ino puts her arms around Naruto's right arm and says, Well, that's taken care of. Shall we get started on our date? With her arms crossed, Tsunade remarked, I don't think now is a good time. We are supposed to spend time today as a family to celebrate Naruto's birthday. It's your birthday? Ino and Tamari exclaimed simultaneously as they gazed at Naruto with wide eyes. Yep, it's a tradition in our family that when one of the kids turns 16 they're to be introduced to the Leaf Village. Naruto replied. Jiraiya continued, glancing at Tamari and Ino, who were both beaming broadly, and it's during this time that the future god chooses his mate. Just like Auntie Tsunade and Uncle Jiraiya found each other. In fact, I remember my mom telling me how Auntie Tsunade snuck out on her 16th birthday and the first person she encountered was Uncle Jiraiya. Hey, isn't that how you met Tamari cuz? Naruto turned to face his mother and said, yeah, I didn't know you snuck out to see the village on your birthday too, Ka-chan. Tsunade started to perspire anxiously. Well, Yuha.Usia. Your mother was pretty wild and adventurous when she was your age, Naruto. Jiraiya replied. Really? Inquired Naruto inquisitively. Oh, like you wouldn't believe, just like you, on her first day in the village your mother caused quite the commotion. Challenging the Leaf Shinobi to fights, and if they lose they have to be her slaves. She came onto every handsome guy she met and the pheromones she was emitting drew in guys like moths to a flame. Jiraiya clarified. As Jiraiya continued to tell their son about the bizarre, embarrassing, and downright foolish things Tsunade had done as a child, her face was flushed. She glanced at her son and saw the fascinated expression on his face. She smiled at this, but it disappeared as soon as she heard Jiraiya's next statement. Then there was the time when she was in heat and was driven insane with arousal that she... No, Tsunade interrupted, and he covered his mouth. Shortly after designating Jiraiya as her mate, Tsunade went into heat, but Jiraiya was on a 2-day mission and she had to wait for him to return. He doesn't need to hear about that, she whispered to Jiraiya. She considered meditating for the duration of his mission, but her arousal prevented her from focusing. She tried masturbating to relieve herself, but it didn't help much. Her desire to fuck her partner became so intense that storm clouds darkened the sky over the land of fire. Tsunade jumped on Jiraiya as soon as he got back to the castle, tore off his clothes, and fucked his brains out for 2 days. The sun shining through the dark clouds during this time symbolized both Tsunade's satisfaction and the light of the new life that now grew inside her. The land of fire also experienced a severe thunderstorm that only passed when Tsunade was completely satisfied. After drawing their attention to her, Ino said, Milady, if I may ask, how did you and Lord Jiraiya meet? Jiraiya sheepishly scratches the back of his head and says, oh that. Your mother left a lasting impression on me. Rewind. A young Jiraiya is returning to the village after completing a crucial mission and was eager to see the women in the hot spring. Little does he know that he will have a fateful encounter today that will alter his life forever, as a young woman is rapidly descending from high above the sky towards the ground. After years of being cooped up in her family's castle, Tsunade is finally getting the chance to explore her land. She thought, this is way more fun than just simply flying down. She felt the wind hit her face as she continued to plummet to the ground. Today is her 16th birthday, and she was supposed to go to the Hidden Leaf Village to meet its people, but she chose to sneak out ahead of her parents and discover what the people there are like. She wondered what kinds of delicious food they make and try some of this, gambling, she had heard her grandfather mention. She saw the trees approaching quickly and was ready to cling to one of the tree, but as she reached the top of the tree, she collided with Jiraiya, who was mid-jump from a tree branch, and they both fell to the ground. Fuck that, it hurts. When Tsunade looked down to see an unconscious Jiraiya lying beneath her, she rubbed her head and said, wait, could this be a male human? I wonder. She cupped his face before kissing him, then pulled back and watched him stir. True love's first kiss. Tsunade smirked as Jiraiya's eyes fluttered open. He looks kinda cute, she murmurs as she brings her hands to his face, feeling every inch of his face against her hands as she feels it. What struck me? Jiraiya noticed Tsunade's smug expression when she looked up. Hey there, Tsunade said in a sensual voice. Jiraiya smirked and snapped back, hello, come here often. Tsunade couldn't contain her laughter. Goddess, that was corny. Jiraiya gazed at the stunning woman before him. Her voice was lovely, and her laugh was like music to his ears. His gaze was captured by her striking bust, which stretched her shirt. He liked his lips and thought, what fabulous tits. Tsunade spoke after ceasing to laugh. Tell me, are you a human? He thought it was a little strange that she had asked, so he said, yes. Tsunade grinned broadly. Then how would you like to be my first human servant? She inquired. You're what? Deadpanned Jiraiya. She asked excitedly, my servant, I always wanted my own human manservant. Tell me, are there others like you? Jiraiya wanted to get as far away from her as possible, but he thought, oh, this chick is nuts. He attempted to stand up, but Tsunade put a hand to his chest and pushed him back down. Listen, I'd like to help you, but I need to get going. She grinned and said, oh, you're not going anywhere. Jiraiya didn't like the predatory expression on her face. She opened her mouth to show off her enlarged canines and declared, I'm going to make you mine. Jiraiya thought, this bitch is crazy. As he turned his head to reveal his neck, Tsunade snapped her head up and gasped as Jiraiya raised his hands to squeeze her breasts, saying, "Shit, I gotta act fast." Jiraiya took advantage of this opportunity to escape her hold, but she managed to catch him. Tsunade angrily questioned, "Who told you, you could touch my chest?" Oh shit. Jiraiya realized that he had made a mistake at that very moment. Jiraiya crashed through multiple trees after Tsunade retracted her right fist and punched him in the jaw. Before furiously leaving, she muttered, "Fucking perverted human." The flashback is over. Ino apologized through her laughter. "I'm sorry for laughing, Lord Jiraiya, but that was just too funny." Jiraiya was the only person in the room not laughing. They heard Jiraiya say, "It wasn't funny for me, I almost died." Because Naruto didn't trust his father, he said, "You're exaggerating too. San." With trepidation, Tsunade said, "I'm afraid not. To be honest, if I didn't turn back to retrieve the necklace my grandfather gave me, then Jiraiya would have died." At this, Naruto went pale. "You mean?" Jiraiya nodded and said, "You were close to not existing, champ. It's safe to say that your father and I didn't get along after that. We hated each other and he kept trying to sneak a peek at me when I was in the hot springs." Tsunade clarified. Ino's romantic side begged to know, "So how did you two fall in love?" Tsunade paused to think, then glanced at Jiraiya before responding, "Well, absence makes the heart grow fonder." "Huh?" asked Naruto, perplexed. "Despite our mutual dislike of one another, Jiraiya and I were never apart. The third Hokage assigned me to a team that had Jiraiya in it. I was immediately against it and so was your father, but Sarutobi Sensei insisted on it and so we reluctantly agreed." Tsunade chuckled at the recollections. "Missions, training, and just plain hanging out, Jiraiya and I did everything together. Without realizing it, we became friends and teammates, but we still hated each other and he kept repeatedly peeping at me to the point that I developed a sixth sense whenever he lays his eyes on me." She began to giggle and Jiraiya began to giggle. "But then while we were on a mission, 3 orphans came up to us and demanded to be taught ninjutsu. Jiraiya agreed and stayed with them for 3 years, training them and teaching them everything he knew about ninjutsu." Tsunade looked distant as she kept talking. "At first I was glad to be rid of this pervert, but as time passed I yearned for his return. I missed our training sessions, heck I even missed it when we argued. I had this hole in my heart and every night I drowned myself in sake." She glanced at her child and then at his classmates and cousins. "Did you know that it's possible to die of a broken heart?" The eyes of everyone except Jiraiya enlarged in surprise. Tsunade completed it for Ino, who was unable to finish, saying, "Why? You mean?" Tsunade smiled after saying solemnly, "Yes, I realized that I was in love with Jiraiya and those years without him and my constant denial to myself of these feelings were killing me." Tsunade explained that after she and Dan hugged, Jiraiya saw them and believed they were together. When the destroyer arrived, she attempted to fight him but was unsuccessful. But then Dan helped me see how foolish I was and made me admit to myself that I was in love with Jiraiya, but Jiraiya tried to save me but got hurt in the process. The destroyer was getting closer and fearing that this would be the end, we confessed our love to each other. Rewind as the destroyer approached with each step, Tsunade and Jiraiya could feel the ground trembling beneath them. She turned to face Jiraiya and said, "Jiraiya," in a quiet voice to get his attention, "there's something I must tell you." He gave her a melancholy smile and said, "You don't need to say anything, Haim, I know you love Dan." "No you idiot, it's you I'm in love with," Tsunade admitted, upset that he had assumed she was in love with someone else. Jiraiya's eyes widened at her admission, and he briefly lost his words before he could speak again. I love you too, Tsunade. I've loved you ever since I started to really get to know you." She gave Jiraiya a passionate kiss while tears streamed down her cheeks. Jiraiya was taken aback by the unexpected kiss but promptly complied. That kiss was the release of all their bottled up love, passion, and longing for one another. Tsunade had to part with it, though, because she still had work to do. Before biting down on a spot between his neck and collarbone, she moved Jiraiya's head to reveal his neck and then opened her mouth to reveal her enlarged canines. Tsunade retreated as Jiraiya winced at her teeth digging into his skin. The puncture wounds vanished, and the emblem of the Uzumaki clan between them appeared on his neck. It showed a white and blonde fox with their foreheads resting against one another and their tails intertwined. Then Tsunade reveals her neck. "Now mark me too." Tsunade recoils a little before Jiraiya pulls himself away, and the same mark that Jiraiya made on her neck also appears. Jiraiya feels his canines grow larger, and without realizing it, he leans his head down to bite her neck. "We're mates, now and forever." They turn to see the destroyer as its spines begin to glow blue due to a loud roar. Tsunade cautions Jiraiya, saying, "Don't even think about it." Jiraiya asks naively, "What?" She narrowed her eyes and said, "You intend to do something insane that will kill you while I'm still alive." Now that he's been caught, Jiraiya asks, "How do you figure?" Tsunade said softly, "Because you're always risking your safety for mine. But it's not going to work this time." "Why not?" As she looks longingly into Jiraiya's eyes, Tsunade explains, "Because now that we're mated, and unless I have a strong reason to live, if you die then I'll die too." Jiraiya kisses Tsunade's lips and says, "Then I guess we'll go to the next life together." The destroyer opens its mouth to launch its attack, but it stops abruptly. Jiraiya and Tsunade turn to face it and observe it flailing its head. Jiraiya asks, "What's wrong with it?" Tsunade whispers, "It's Dan." Her eyes enlarge as she recognizes something. He's using his spirit transformation technique. As he observes the destroyer shake his head without glancing at anyone who might be impacted, Jiraiya asks, "Can he even hold it?" Tsunade gets up and helps Jiraiya to his feet, saying, "Dan has given us a chance to escape. Come on." Jiraiya tries to walk, but his injuries and an odd sensation running through his body prevent him from doing so. She put his left arm over her shoulder and started guiding him to safety, saying, "Your body will begin to change as a result of me marking you. You won't be able to move properly for a while." Dan's spirit is in the destroyer's body, and the longer he stays there, the more pain he feels as his soul is torn apart. What a monster. His goal was to buy time for Tsunade and Jiraiya to flee and perhaps use his technique to rot the destroyer from the inside out, but it isn't working because the destroyer views his intrusion as a minor annoyance, similar to flies buzzing in your face until they are crushed. For a brief moment, he was able to see through its eyes and realize that Tsunade and Jiraiya had escaped before his will was easily overridden. Tsunade was fighting this. Truly only a god can hope to stand a chance against this monster. As he was reversing his technique, he felt blue light enveloping his soul. "Ah!" He screamed in pain as his soul was pushed out of the destroyer's body, but he was able to guide it in the direction of his body. "They've made their escape, I must make mine as well." In a secret location where Dan concealed his body, Tsunade was tending to Jiraiya's wounds when it jerked violently and then spat up blood. Tsunade and Jiraiya say, "Dan," in horror as they watch Dan's body tremble like he's having a seizure. To heal him, Tsunade approached him. Dan cautioned, "Don't," as Tsunade came to a complete halt. In order to demonstrate his point, Dan's body begins to rot and turn black. "I've been severely infected by its chakra, it's too late for me." Tsunade was about to cry when she said, "Oh Dan, why?" As he coughed up more blood, he explained, "Because I wanted to protect those precious to me, simple as that." With her eyes closed, Tsunade let her tears fall freely. She turned to face him after Jiraiya put a hand on her shoulder, then buried her head in his chest. Jiraiya put his arms around her and allowed her to cry. He turned to face Dan, who grinned at him. Dan saw Jiraiya's narrowed eyes and said, "Soa. Tsunade marked you as her mate?" He raised his right arm and said, "Congratulations. I'd shake your hand but..." However, as his hand hit the ground, it fell off and crumbled into dust. As his body started to break, he said candidly, "I'm very happy for you both." Tsunade looked at Dan with bloodshot eyes and said, "Don't both of you beat yourselves up over this, especially you Tsunade." They both nodded when he said, "Just promise me that you'll both live a life of happiness and love." Dan's final words before his body disintegrated and he fell to the ground in dust were, "Then I have no regrets." As she and her partner sobbed uncontrollably over the loss of such a wonderful friend, Tsunade pressed her face against Jiraiya's chest. End of flashback. As Tsunade concluded her story, Jiraiya put his arm around her shoulder to console his partner, and the room fell silent. Tsunade drew strength from him and was grateful for this. Ino wiped her eyes and said, That wasa." She was at a loss for words to express what she had just heard. Tamari, who was crying too, said, "He was truly a great man." Ino and Tamari leaned into Naruto as he put his arms around them, expressing their gratitude for the consolation. As Naruto sobbed uncontrollably, she exclaimed, "He was a hero." Tsunade grinned adoringly as she gazed at Naruto, saying, "We kept our promise and our love only grew stronger as the years passed. We were actually going to visit the memorial stone where the names of all the shinobi who gave their lives in service to Konoha are written." Naruto sat up and said, "Awesome, let's go then," taking Ino and Tamari with him. Ino exclaims, Milady?" "Yes?" Ino asks timidly, Is it alright if I come along?" Tamari also requests permission, saying, "I would also like permission to accompany you as well, please." Tsunade gazes into their beseeching eyes, which her son has joined. "I don't know." Jiraiya joyfully exclaims, "Of course you can come." Which makes Tsunade turn to glare at him while Ino, Temari, and Naruto all smile broadly. What? This is a family visit and those two are Naruto's mates, so they're family now. He reminds her. In fact, why don't we invite that pink-haired girl as well? He marked Sakura too? Ino's eyes enlarge at the mention of pink hair. Jiraiya asks, "Didn't you say you marked 4 girls, Naruto?" Naruto affirms, "Yep." Jiraiya asks, "Do you know her name?" Everyone's eyes enlarge as Naruto responds, "Yeah, her name is Hyuga Hinata." Naruto smiled and thought, Hinata, Sakura, Ino, and Temari. Nice job cuz. Jiraiya closed his eyes and nodded in agreement with Naruto's choice of mates, thinking, a goddess from another land. 2 heirs from well-established clans. I don't know much about the pink-haired one, but I'll when we meet her again. I'm so proud of you, Naruto. Ino thought mockingly, he had to pick out my friends. I need to make sure that I'm Naruto. Kun's number 1. Ino smiled slyly, her eyes briefly turning into slits before returning to their normal state. Before she dealt with this, Tsunade wanted to spend a little more time with the 3 of them because she was shocked by how today was going. However, she was not lucky, as Ino noticed Tsunade's expression of frustration and embarrassment at interrupting her family time. An idea suddenly occurred to her. "Milady, have you 3 had anything to eat yet?" she inquires. Tsunade asks, raising an eyebrow, "Just some snacks, why?" "I know this nice, secluded spot that's perfect for a picnic. You, Lord Jiraiya and Naruto can enjoy a meal there in peace," Ino replied. The suggestion causes Tsunade's eyes to widen. That is actually a good idea. Ino volunteered, saying, "I'll tell you what, I'll even prepare the food for you." Tsunade graciously turned down the offer, saying, "That's awfully nice of you, but I couldn't ask that of you." Without taking no for an answer, Ino said, "It's the least I can do. What a good way to spend time with your family than a picnic." Tsunade said, "Well, if you insist, but at least let me help." With an uncomfortable expression on his face, Jiraiya stated, "I don't think that's a good idea." Unable to understand, Ino asks, "Why not Lord Jiraiya?" Jiraiya deadpanned, "Because Tsunade can't cook to save her life." Ino and Temari gazed at Tsunade. Ino queries, "Is this true, milady?" Tsunade looks away, her face flushing bright red. "I remember my mom telling me that Aunt Tsunade could wipe out an entire shinobi battalion with her awful cooking," said Naruto. Jiraiya concurred, saying, "Yeah, that sounds about right." Tsunade countered, "Hey now, isn't that exaggerating it a bit? But there's also a story my mom told me about how you wiped out an entire village sharing them the food of the gods," Naruto remarked. Naruto glanced at his mother in shock as Tsunade went pale. "Is that true, Ka-chan?" Naruto continued to speak while Tsunade stayed silent. "If you think that's surprising, you should hear about the stories regarding her beauty." Oh, everyone's attention was drawn to this. Mai told me when Aunt Tsunade visited the other elemental countries, people would come from miles around to get a glimpse of her legendary beauty. And they weren't disappointed, but after seeing how beautiful the Land of Fire's goddess is, it drove them to madness, Naruto stated to them. Raising an eyebrow, Naruto questioned, "Madness?" "Yes." Naruto's voice darkened. Once people saw her beauty, they became obsessed. Men would no longer be able to look at another woman without comparing them to Aunt Tsunade. Women will try in vain to become as beautiful as her. Their vain attempts to pursue her beauty lead them down a spiraling road to death. Naruto laughed when her fox ears emerged from the crown of her head. "Oh, but that's not the worst part." Inquiring further, Naruto asks, "You mean there's more?" Eventually a faction was formed in each of the lands governed by the other gods that worshipped Aunt Tsunade, and as you know, a citizen that lives in the domain of a certain god cannot worship another. Naruto clarifies. Revolts were started in an attempt to overthrow the current god and put Aunt Tsunade in charge. Everyone gasped except for Tsunade and Jiraiya. Naruto saw the frowns on Jiraiya's and Naruto's faces and said, "But then there were some gods who wanted to have Aunt Tsunade for themselves, and looking at her it's easy to see why." While their own lands were on the brink of civil war, the gods attempted to win favor with Aunt Tsunade. Wait, if they really wanted to marry Lady Tsunade, why isn't it written down? Temari asked. Surely someone would have recorded something as important as a god of another land wanting another. Naruto laughed. She looked at Tsunade, who merely rolled her eyes, and said, "That's because it was all done in secret, you can ask Auntie Tsunade yourself." Ino asks, "Is this true, milady?" Tsunade lets out a sigh. "Unfortunately," she says, glancing at her son and partner, who have twisted expressions of anger. She raised her fist and declared, I send them packing because they wouldn't give up no matter how many times I said no. And that brings me the other thing Aunt Tsunade is famous for, her immense strength. They say she can turn entire mountains into rubble, rearrange landmasses, and cause massive tsunamis with just a single punch. Naruto raised her finger. But now she can do it with one finger. While Jiraiya was beaming maniacally, Tsunade herself felt self-conscious as Temari, Ino, and Naruto gazed at her in wonder. Tsunade grinned smugly as Naruto said, "Wow Ka-chan, I always knew you're amazing, but this raises the bar even higher." Rubbed her son's head, Tsunade said, "There's more to me than you thought, kiddo." Naruto, what happened with the revolts going around the elemental nations? Ino inquires. Naruto grinned. Of that, Auntie Tsunade took care of it personally. And that brings us to two other things Auntie is famous for. Her healing abilities and her temper. Jiraiya nervously rubbed the back of his neck and said, "Oh yes." Tsunade gave him an elbow to the ribs for saying, "She does have quite the temper. See what I mean?" When Tsunade struck him once more, everyone laughed. Naruto then attracted their attention by dousing her body in red chakra. Ordinarily the chakra of a god is deadly to humans except for those we chose as our mates. But Auntie Tsunade's chakra is special. Her chakra exudes life. My mom told me that when Auntie was a little girl she and Lady Mito would explore the woods of Konoha, and it was there that she saw that the plant life around her would start to grow. Flowers would grow from the spots she stepped on. Even the wildlife were drawn to her. Jiraiya closed his eyes and grinned as he thought back to his childhood, when Tsunade had gone home 2 days prior. He was conducting research in the woods late at night at a remote waterfall that is typically visited by a group of girls during the day. As he approached the location, he heard splashing and approached in silence. What he witnessed will always be etched in his memory. A nude woman standing atop the water, her skin glistening in the moonlight. He can see the water droplets flowing down her smooth skin, her toned arms and legs, her plump ass, and her slim waistline with a hint of a six-pack. He was most attracted to her enormous breasts, though, which wavered as she gracefully walked on top of the water, which rippled with every soft step. He saw that the water surrounding her was starting to rise and form tiny spheres that moved in response to her hand movements. When he saw her face, his eyes widened as she danced on top of the water. There was no mistaking her wet hair framing her lovely round face, her full, kissable lips, or her stunning, light brown eyes that he could lose himself in. Tsunade was the one. Jiraiya was about to approach when she exploded out of the water and landed by the shore. She was unique. She had 9 tails behind her and fox ears the same color as her hair on top of her head. He watched her dance a little longer before she dove into the water. He saw the trees surrounding the waterfall sprouting flowers. Tsunade closing her eyes as a golden chakra enveloped her body, and the forest coming to life as animals emerged from it, attracted by the light. Jiraiya could sense the cozy aura surrounding him even from his hiding place, which gave him a sense of security and joy. However, the joy was short-lived as he was startled out of his reverie by a bird that landed on top of his head. The nightmare started when he chased the bird away. Tsunade's body was now facing his direction, her hands clenched into fists before opening them to reveal her clawed hands. Her muscle mass increased, but not to the point of being overly muscular. Her large breasts became even bigger, and she grew taller, but Jiraiya's eyes were drawn more to her chest. Suddenly, the warm aura that surrounded him stopped, and the forest became quiet. The flowers withered and the sky darkened as Tsunade changed into an anthropomorphic fox, and he saw that she had blonde fur all over her body and that her face had pushed out into a muzzle. With a look of pure rage on her face, she lunged at him, but as she approached Jiraiya, blood spurted from his nose, sending him flying backward. She was covered in blood and blinked in confusion. When she recognized him and saw the satisfied expression on his face, she went to look into him. Then she witnessed his spirit ascending to heaven and departing his body, but she refused to accept it. After taking the spirit's tail and forcing it back into Jiraiya, who woke up gasping, she sent him into a night of hell. Tsunade asks, "What's with that look?" He smiled and said, "Just reminiscing." Naruto went on. Tsunade narrowed her eyes but chose not to question it further. Because Auntie's chakra is so full of life, she is the only god to be able to use and master healing jutsus. Which is why she's the greatest doctor in all the elemental nations. She created several new medical jutsus that cured several diseases that were once thought incurable. She even brought an entire village back from the dead. Tsunade grinned sorrowfully as Temari, Ino, and Naruto gazed at her in wonder. She thought of her brother and Dan and said, "If only I had that power sooner." Auntie visited the other elemental nations and stopped the fighting while at the same time healing the injured by radiating her healing chakra. She negotiated with the gods to allow those that worshipped her in their lands to move to her land. Naruto clarified. Ino muttered, I suppose that would explain the painting, but Naruto could hear her. What painting? Inquired Naruto. There's a famous painting in the Konoha Museum depicting Lady Tsunade floating above a group of people, shining like a beacon of hope in a dark and dreary background. Ino clarified. My family has a copy of the painting in our living room. Naruto turns to face his mom. How famous are you, Chan? Tsunade moaned, more than I would like. Auntie Tsunade is an inspiration to many, especially young girls. She inspires them to reach greater heights and not be discouraged because of their gender, smiled Naruto. You are my inspiration, Lady Tsunade. I admired your strength and beauty and worked hard to become like you, Ino grinned. To be honest, I'm the same. I wanted to be strong just like you, with the wisdom and courage of a great leader, Temari added. Tsunade was both touched and embarrassed that they viewed her as a role model. Jiraiya grinned proudly at his partner, who modeled a character from one of his books after Tsunade because she inspires him as well. Jiraiya stared at Naruto in shock as she remarked, the people rallied behind the princess, her courage and strength inspired them, together they rebuild their destroyed village. As she showed Jiraiya a book featuring a picture of a blonde kunoichi facing a fierce red dragon, Naruto smiled and said, the village girl held her little brother's lifeless body, her tears mixed with the heavy rain that pelted against her body, washing away the blood and grime. She glared at the monster. Filled with anger and hate, she vowed revenge as her screams of anguish echo around her destroyed village. The main female character, Akemi, sounds an awful like Auntie Tsunade. As everyone looks at Jiraiya, she starts to fidget. What's with that look? So the author might have based his character on Tsunade. What's the big deal? Naruto opens her book to the final page and starts reading, grinning. 5 years have passed since the battle against the powerful dragon god, 5 years since its defeat at the hands of Akemi, 5 years since she disappeared. The land enjoyed a new era of peace and prosperity. A farmer is tending to her field. She stops to wipe some sweat off her brow and takes a moment to look at the remaining work she has left and sighs. Before she can resume, she feels a tug at her pants leg, and looks down to see a little boy with blonde hair. He stares into her emerald eyes, the same as his own. Knowing what he wanted, she puts down her shovel and scoops him up in her arms. He embraces her and snuggles his face against her big breasts. Akemi smiles as she strokes her son's head. She then feels herself being lifted off the ground and into the arms of her husband, who had a big grin on his face as he held her bridal style before spinning them around. The family shared a laugh as Akemi relished in this moment of happiness. She no longer has to be alone. She now has a family that every day showers her with love. Though the road to get here was tough and oftentimes she almost gave up, but with the help of her friends and her then lover, now husband, she persevered and together freed their land from the darkness that was suffocating it. Even if she chose to live a life as an ordinary farmer and local medicine woman, she wouldn't trade this life she and her husband have carved out for anything. But the legend of the kunoichi who stood up to the dragon god and brought hope to the land will be forever told by the grateful people she and her friends saved. Naruto finished as she closed her book. Jiraiya sighed in defeat. Okay. I might have taken inspiration from Tsunade for my female characters. How many more tales about me have you penned? Tsunade pushed her breasts up and crossed her arms beneath them as she asked. They were all bestsellers, just a handful. In an effort to calm Tsunade, Jiraiya remarked, the message of my books is to inspire the people to believe in themselves, never give up, and have hope. A lot of reviews for the books praise how relatable the main female lead is. It's true. Ino concurred. Jiraiya. Sama, I really enjoy reading your books. Would you mind signing them for me? I'll have to go back home to get them, even though I don't have any with me. Jiraiya smiled proudly and said, of course, I'd be happy to sign them. Temari gets up and takes a book out of her ninja pouch, saying, could you sign my copy of An Accidental Hero? Temari cheerfully handed over her book to Jiraiya, who smiled and held out his hand. Jiraiya took a pen nearby and signed it before returning it to Temari. To Temari, thank you for enjoying my books. I hope you will do so in the future. Before turning to face Jiraiya in bewilderment, Temari read aloud, Jiraiya, P.S. Thanks for the inspiration for my new book. He winked at them both and said, I'll be sure to give you an advance copy, and you too, Ino. How about me? Hey. Naruto sulked. I haven't forgotten about you, Naruto-chan. Come on, let's already go see the memorial stone. Let's pick up Hinata-chan and Sakura-chan, Naruto urged everyone. Are you even aware of their residence? Tsunade raised an eyebrow in question. As she guided them to their initial destination, Naruto grinned and said, I do, I'll lead you there. Haruno house. She sighed as she lay on her bed, remembering how Tsunade caught her making out with her son and moaned, I can't believe she caught me in that situation, that was so not how I wanted to meet her. Then she remembered what Tsunade had done to her, so she sat up, collected chakra in her hand, and did a self-diagnosis. What's this? Did Lady Tsunade do this? She asked, noticing a faint foreign chakra gradually making its way through her chakra network. This chakra is familiar, Sakura said, closing her eyes as she considered the location of her chakra sense. This chakra is. The doorbell rang throughout the house. Please, Sakura, get that, from the kitchen, Mebuki, Sakura's mother, called. All right. Sakura responds as she gets off her bed and heads downstairs. The doorbell rang again but repeatedly. I know who that is. Sakura knew only Naruto rang her doorbell like that. She grabbed the handle and swung her door open. What is it, Naruto? Can't you see I'm? She pauses in the middle of her sentence when she realizes who it is. Hey Sakura. Chan. Naruto smiles as he says hello. You? How did you find out where I live? Sakura asked, not expecting to see him again, much less outside her door. Naruto gestured to Naruto and the others behind him and said, my cousin showed us. Tsunade politely said, may we please come in? Sakura was stunned, saying, Lady Tsunade. Yes, I hope it's okay if we drop by. With sweetness, she said. Sakura invited them in, saying, not at all, it's an honor to have you, please come in. Mebuki gasped as she exclaimed, Sakura who is, in her own house, emerging from the kitchen. Tsunade smiled and said, good afternoon, ma'am. You have a lovely home. Lady Tsunade. What brings you here? Mebuki asked, unable to believe she was talking to her goddess. There's something we would like to discuss with your family, Tsunade said. Mebuki and Kazashi couldn't believe what they were seeing of the goddess Tsunade, hailed as the most beautiful and strong woman in all the elemental nations, sitting on their living room couch. They couldn't help but gaze at her mate Jiraiya, a great and powerful shinobi who is known throughout the lands as the one who stole the goddess Tsunade's heart, and then they looked at their son, who was sitting between his parents. He took more of his mother's appearance than his father, but they could still see traces of Jiraiya in Naruto. The three of them moved in unison as they took their teas from the table in front of them, sipped their teas, and then exhaled contentedly, which made Mebuki and Kazashi smile. Mebuki asked courteously, so what do we owe the honor of your visit? Tsunade looked at Sakura, who was seated on the side with Tamari, Ino, and Naruto, and said, yes, it has something to do with the encounter your daughter had with my son. She didn't hurt his feelings, did she? Fearing that her daughter had provoked the goddess' wrath, Mebuki went pale. Tsunade reassured the woman, who appeared to be on the verge of passing out, saying, no, nothing like that. It's just a... She didn't know how to break the news to them, but fortunately Jiraiya did it for her. Happy to hear it, Jiraiya said, our son has chosen your daughter to be his mate. As Mebuki, Kazashi, and Sakura processed what they had just heard, time seemed to stop. Eventually, Sakura broke the silence. What? She muttered. Naruto grinned broadly and declared, I want you to be my mate, Sakura-chan. Do you want me to be your partner? Unbelieving what she had heard, Sakura repeated the question. Naruto bowed his head at Sakura's parents and said, hell yeah. Before turning to face them, he said, it's nice to meet you both. I promise to make your daughter happy and protect her with my life. With their heads bowed, Mebuki and Kazashi stood up and said, we are extremely honored that you have chosen our daughter as your mate Naruto. Dono. They were still dazed by the idea that their goddess's son had chosen their daughter to be his mate and to become a goddess. Mebuki went on to say, we know that she will be taken care of in your family's care. Sakura was about to raise her concerns when Naruto abruptly got up, walked around the table, and knelt in front of her parents, saying, hey now, there's no reason for you to kneel. Sakura couldn't believe what she was seeing, and her parents accepted it without any issues. Actually, I ought to be kneeling instead. When Kazashi and Mebuki heard this, their heads jerked up. How could you say that, Naruto? Dono. A god such as yourself should never bow before mere mortals such as us. Kazashi continued. Don't say that. To us gods, you are more than just mortals. A god exists to protect and serve the people who believe in them. By treating each other as equals and working together, we can achieve a bright future filled with hope and happiness. Naruto said, because a god is nothing without their people. And I am honored that you deem me worthy enough to be with your daughter. Naruto turned to Sakura, saying, Sakura-chan, I know we just met and this is all really sudden, but I ask that you give me a chance to prove myself worthy of you. Mebuki and Kazashi were stunned by Naruto's words, while Tsunade and Jiraiya grinned proudly at their son. Sakura's face flushed. She had never been in this kind of predicament before, and the idea of a god wanting her and wanting to prove his value to her made her heart skip a beat. He is a fantastic kisser, and the thought of receiving them regularly was very alluring. Oh, what the hell? She thought, then nodded her head, which caused Naruto to smile broadly. Well, now that that has been taken care of. Tsunade rose and held out her hands to Mebuki and Kazashi, forming a bright glowing sphere between them before it faded to reveal a golden fox idol. As it is customary, the family of the chosen maid shall receive this idol. The idol drifted over to Sakura's parents, and Mebuki took it. She felt a presence from it and turned to her goddess. The idol will bring you good luck as well as protection for your family and home. Tsunade responded. Thank you so much for this gift, milady. Kazashi and Mebuki both bowed to their respective goddesses. As she approached Sakura, she told them, think nothing of it, and you may call me Tsunade. Sakura. Sakura trembled uncomfortably under Tsunade's stare, feeling as though her eyes were peering into her soul. Why? Yes. Thinking, she probably can. Tsunade smiled softly and said, it's nice to properly meet you. Sakura said, likewise, milady, it's an honor to meet our land's goddess in person. Her gaze kept going to Tsunade's chest, where she exclaimed, they're huge. Sakura pondered for a moment before realizing Tsunade extended her hand. I hope being your mother.in.law doesn't bother you. Tsunade smiled and asked. Sakura shook Tsunade's hand and said, not at all. Then she froze, felt a shock of electricity run through her body from her hand, swayed coldly, and her eyes briefly flickered to slits before returning to normal. What was? Sakura, are you okay? Sakura's thoughts were interrupted by Tsunade's question. Even though Sakura is unaware of what just transpired, she reassured her goddess, yes, nothing to worry about, milady. The expression in Sakura's eyes was one of fear, and Tsunade wasn't buying it. It's unwise to lie to a goddess, Sakura. Before revealing the truth to Tsunade, Sakura tensed under her gaze. It's kind of hard to explain it, but when I shook your hand I felt this spark go through my body, and I felt afraid. As Sakura looked perplexed, Tsunade went on, it's because of the fox chakra my son gave you. Right now you have a small amount of fox chakra along with your own. The fox chakra has recognized my chakra and my rank. Rank? Sakura inquired in confusion. 9 tails followed Tsunade. Normally it's the number of tails that determine a fox god's rank, but in your cases, since you aren't even foxes yet, I would say you're at the bottom. Tamari challenged, we won't stay that way for long. By starting at the bottom, there's nowhere to go but up, Ino continued. I'm sure you'll be a higher rank once you're marked, but don't get carried away thinking that you're anywhere near my level. Tsunade kindly reminded them. With sparks flying between her, Ino, and Tsunade, Tamari remarked, we'll see about that. What are you talking about, please? Sakura looked at Tamari and Ino as she asked. Naruto smiled and remarked, oh, we forgot to tell you, but you weren't the only one chosen to be my cousin's mate. In the meantime, Hinata Hyuga is lying on top of her bed in her room at the Hyuga compound, staring at her ceiling and holding one of her favorite novels to her chest about a valiant warrior who goes out into the world to help those in need and defeat evil. Hinata sighs and closes her eyes, but she opens them when she sees a picture of herself and Naruto having sex. Why'd I keep having these lewd images of myself with the goddess's heir? Why did he kiss me so quickly? She asks herself as she sits up and hugs her legs. Recalling her kiss with Naruto, which made her blush, she puts her index and middle fingers to her lips and says, I can't believe I fainted in front of him. She then collapses back on her bed and covers her face with both hands. Hinata peered through her fingers when she heard a knock on her door and asked, who is it? It's me, Oni. Sama. Hanabi-chan? Hinata got out of bed and went to open her bedroom door to reveal her younger sister Hanabi, who wears a tan kimono and wears her hair tied in a ponytail at the mid-back length. How are things going? Hanabi, who has always had a close relationship with her older sister and has always told her everything, asked anxiously. Well, I'm just feeling embarrassed at the way I acted in front of our goddess's heir earlier today, said Hinata. You got to meet him. What is he like? Hanabi nearly yelled, and Hinata nodded. Hinata informed her sister, well, he's easy to talk to and when he speaks there's wisdom to his words. Is that all? Hanabi raised an eyebrow in question. Hinata responded, well, I didn't get a chance to fully get to know him. Is he attractive? Hinata's face flushed as Hanabi teased her, saying, tell me how he looked. As she recalled his eyes, Hinata trailed off, well, he has spiky blonde hair that's as bright as the sun, 3 whisker marks on each of his cheeks, and the bluest eyes I have ever seen. And his soft lips. She whispered, but Hanabi heard her. What about his lips was that? Hanabi asked. Nothing. Hinata denied it, but as Hanabi realized it, her eyes widened and a smile appeared on her face. Did you not kiss him? Hanabi inquired, already anticipating the response. As Hinata remembered Naruto kissing her, her face became even more red, and she put her hands over her face. Is he a good kisser? As her sister squealed in shame, Hanabi teased. Yamanaka Flower Shop. As the customer left the store, Ino's mother, who was working the register, said, "Have a wonderful day." She had just finished selling a bouquet of roses. An additional sale? Yes, business is doing great today, Mrs. Yamanaka said as she turned to face a door that led to the house's living quarters and saw her husband coming into the store carrying a big basket of arranged flowers. As he set the basket on an empty spot by the window in front of the store, Inoichi remarked, "Well, today is the day the goddess brings her family to the village to introduce her heir. It's practically a holiday. I wonder if Ino and her friends are having fun at the festival. I don't believe she's currently with her pals." When Mrs. Yamanaka spoke, her husband gave her a perplexed look. "What are you saying?" As he made his way to the register, Inoichi inquired. Mrs. Yamanaka told him, "She's on a date." Inoichi flinched visibly. Inoichi's overprotective tendencies kicked in and he replied, "I see. Ino will be all right, Inoichi." Mrs. Yamanaka reminded him, "She is a kunoichi after all, so she can take care of herself." "I know," Inoichi murmured. "I just can't help feeling this way. She's my baby girl." "I understand, sweetie, but you must acknowledge that she is no longer our little girl." Mrs. Yamanaka informed him that she was now a woman and that she would soon give birth to grandchildren. "Ino is too young to become a mother," Inoichi said, glaring at his wife after doing a double take. He yelled, causing his wife to giggle. Before he could say more, the flowers in the shop started glowing and the flowers that weren't in bloom began to bloom. "What's going on?" As she observed additional flowers growing from the stem of single-dot cut flowers, Mrs. Yamanaka questioned her husband. Inoichi honestly said, "I'm not sure." He had no idea what was going on, and at that moment, they heard the store bell ring, indicating that a customer had arrived. "Whoa, what took place here?" Both of them turned to see Ino exploring the shop. "Ino. I hope you don't mind, but I brought guests." Ino moved aside to show a grinning Naruto, an irritated Sakura, and Tamari, but what really surprises them are the other three visitors. Lady Tsunade. "It's an honor to have you here," Inoichi said, kneeling before the goddess and her family because he couldn't believe they were in his store. Tsunade looked at the flowers that were growing and said, "The honor is ours. My apologies for what's happening to your beautiful flowers." Mrs. Yamanaka said, "There's no need for you to apologize, milady. The extra flowers are always useful," Inoichi went on. Tsunade remarked, "But still, I thought this wouldn't happen again." As he approached the flowers on one of the shelves, Naruto remarked, "Maybe your life force is just that strong, Chan." The flowers instantly sprouted into more. "Yeah, strong enough to be passed on to you." Jiraiya responded, "I wonder if all our son got from me is my good looks while he got everything else from you." As she walked to support her son, Tsunade said, "That's a good thing, he won't be a pervert like you." As he studied the multiplying flowers, Naruto remarked, "I don't get it. Naruto explained to us that your life force was already powerful when you were young. Why is this occurring at this time?" Jiraiya said, "Because you're probably a late bloomer, kiddo. But earlier when I first got here, my life force didn't have an effect on the plants," Naruto told them. Jiraiya told him, "That's because you're a weird kid, just like your mom." Tsunade gave him a glare before softening her features and turning back to her son. Tsunade informed him, "Naru-chan, he's right, regardless of how your father stated it." "Is he?" Naruto's eyes widened as he gazed at his mother. "Am I?" With a start, Jiraiya said, "Naru-chan, our family is known for our powerful life force, but mine is especially powerful." Tsunade rolled her eyes and said, "Yes." She put her right hand against Naruto's left cheek and gazed affectionately at him. "Especially after I had you. Chan, not in front of everyone." Naruto's cheeks flushed. He looked at the girls, who were grinning at him. "Sorry, but embarrassing you in front of your soon-to-be mates is part of a mother's job." Tsunade was being direct. "Just wait till I show them your baby pictures." "Please don't," Naruto begged. Ino grinned and continued, "I would love to see how cute Naruto-kun looked when he was younger." Jiraiya then nudged Tsunade, saying, "Don't let his cuteness fool you, he was a real handful. Kind of like how you were." However, Naruto wasn't like that. "Naru-chan wasn't like me as a child, he was an angel." Tsunade proudly told him, blushing as she recalled how she would constantly get into trouble as a child. with the maids chasing her around the castle and getting her into places she wasn't supposed to. Jiraiya recalled how composed and well behaved Naruto was around Tsunade, but when she had to go down to the land of fire, he would get bored and pass the time by pulling practical jokes on Jiraiya. "I tell ya, Naruto made every day a living hell for me," Jiraiya said. "When you were around, but when you weren't, Naruto was a little hellraiser. As a shinobi, I've encountered my fair share of difficulties, but nothing comes close to the difficulties of fatherhood. But I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world." Inoichi turned to his daughter and said, "I understand what you mean, Jiraiya. Sama, nothing ever truly prepares you for being a father." Ino smiled at her father, who returned the smile, but his eyes widened when he realized something. He then slowly turned his head to Tsunade and asked, "Milady, did I hear you say mates?" "Oh, my apologies, Inoichi-san. It almost slipped my mind the purpose of our visit." Tsunade blinked before realizing why they had come. Then she approached Inoichi and produced the same golden idol that she had given the Harunos. Tsunade informed him that, "My son has chosen your daughter to be his mate." Ino joyfully went to Naruto and put her arms around him, saying, "Isn't this great, Daddy? I'm getting married." Before his eyes rolled to the back of his head and he passed out, Inoichi gazed at them while his thoughts repeated what Ino had just said. At the Konoha General Hospital, a medical kunoichi is caring for a young patient who has a broken arm. "There you go," she said softly as the child flexed his arm to check that it was no longer hurting. "Whoa, I'm so grateful." As he leapt from the examination table and made his way to his mother's side, the young boy exclaimed with joy. The boy's mother bowed and said, "Thank you so much, Shizune-san." Shizune told her, "No problem, just make sure he's more careful in the future." As she and her son left the room, the boy's mother said, "I will." Shizune went to her desk and unchecked her computer. She typed something before shutting it down. She leaned back on her chair staring at the ceiling before reaching inside her kimono to pull out two photos. One is of a much younger version of herself standing in front of a younger Tsunade who had her hands on the younger girl's shoulders. They're both smiling in the photo. Shizune smiled as she recalled that the photo was taken shortly after her Uncle Dan had introduced them. She remembered how excited she was at seeing her land's goddess in person and having this picture taken with her. Her smile suddenly faded as she remembered her deceased uncle. He was the only family she had left in the world and now she was all alone, or so she thought. She focused on the second photo, which was of herself a little older and already a genin being held by both Tsunade and Jiraiya. They both decided to look after her and treated her like their own daughter. Her smile brightened as she put the photos away and pulled out a pendant with a red jewel at the center. She channeled her chakra into it, causing the jewel to glow and display a projection of herself as a genin holding a baby, her little brother Naruto. The image shifted to one of herself in her late teens with a 5-year-old Naruto on her shoulders. As she recalled the day she told Tsunade and Jiraiya that she wanted to live in the Leaf Village, she whispered, "Oto-oto." Tsunade didn't take the news well and forbade her from entering the village, and they got into a heated argument, each of them saying things they would later regret. Shizune closed her eyes. "I should never have taken you as my daughter, and instead left you to die in that village," Shizune said angrily, but the words still hurt, which made the next ones even more agonizing. "If only you were a better goddess, then my uncle and even your brother would still be alive." She has always regretted saying those words, but at that moment she wanted to hurt her adopted mother just as she hurt her. It was only after they had time to cool off did they realize what they just said. Shizune knew that the death of her Uncle Dan and Nawaki left a deep scar in her mother's heart, which is why she is so overprotective of her and Naruto, but if she was being honest, she was also guilty of being overprotective of Naruto. They were both lucky that Naruto was asleep. They didn't want him to witness his sister and mother fighting. They both apologized furiously, crying in each other's arms. Tsunade and Jiraiya agreed with Shizune's decision to live in the Leaf, but she could tell that her mother still didn't want her to go. But the worst part for her was telling her Oto-oto. Just like their mother, he didn't want her to go and threw a fit. Shizune assured him that she will come back to visit and bring him souvenirs. She bid farewell and went to the Leaf. She stayed in the house of her great-grandparents on her adoptive mother's side, and the first few nights she did feel lonely and was even beginning to doubt her decision to live on her own, but she stuck with it and eventually made a life in the Leaf as a shinobi. She also put her medical skills she'd learned from her mother to good use by working at the hospital as the head doctor. She did return home to visit like she said and brought gifts for her little brother and helping with his training. The image shifted again to one of a 12-year-old Naruto and herself in her 20s covered in dirt from training. As she put her pendant away, Shizune heard a knock on her office door and said, "Come in." Riser appeared as the door opened, lifting up the basket containing a variety of herbs and saying, "Hello Shizune-san. I have the herbs you asked for." As she got up from her chair and approached him, Shizune said, Thank you very much Riser.san. Anytime. Have you had a chance to enjoy the festival yet? Riser asked, passing her the basket. After returning to her desk and setting the basket beside her computer, she turned to Riser and said, Not yet, I had a busy day today. But I plan to later on with my family. Even though he had only been in the village for 6 years, Riser had already learned about Shizun's relationship to the goddess of the land of fire because she was always being bowed to wherever she went. That's good to hear, it wouldn't do our goddess any good to overwork herself. Riser grinned. It was well known that Shizun was not only trained by Tsunade but was also made her daughter. Before Riser wished her a good day, Shizun rolled her eyes and said, I'll keep that in mind. She then went to check her herbs when she heard a knock on her door again. Did Riser forget something? As she opened her door, she thought, but it wasn't Riser. I hope I'm not interrupting you, milady. With narrowed eyes, Shizun said, Danzo, what can I do for you? Have you had a chance to see your mother? I would like to talk to her about something, he inquired. Shizun replied, I haven't had the chance to meet with her yet. She could tell Danzo was annoyed when he used the word, mother. I see, if you get the chance can you tell her that there's something I would like to discuss with her, he replied. Shizun replied, sure. She wanted him to leave immediately because she could not bear to be around him any longer. Before Shizun shut her door, he said, and could you please wish your brother a happy birthday for me? He turned to go. Then I'll be on my way. Shizun's blood started to boil, but she just grinned and said, will do. She leaned against the door and closed it gently. She heard Danzo's retreating footsteps, and when she was certain he was gone, she clenched her fists and gritted her teeth, muttering, how dare he? She should have known that Danzo was pursuing her baby brother. I better finish up and meet up with my family. Shizun went to her desk, picked up the basket, then returned to the door and left her office. Back at the house of Yamanaka, Inoichi gasps and leaps to his feet, asking, what? Where? He looks around him and realizes he's lying on the couch in the living room. A dream? Recalling the goddess and her family in this very living room, Inoichi pondered. Oh, you're awake. Inoichi sat down on the couch and said, I had this crazy dream. Ino was getting married to Lady Tsunade's son. He laughed, but then he noticed his wife's uncomfortable expression. It was a dream, right? Inoichi followed Mrs. Yamanaka's gaze to her left without saying anything, and his eyes widened when he saw a painting of Tsunade floating above a crowd of people, shining like a beacon of hope in a dark and gloomy background, and a golden fox idol resting on top of a self. It wasn't a dream, was it? With a faint smile that vanished as she continued, Mrs. Yamanaka informed him, no dear, our daughter is going to become a goddess. And so are Sakura, Lady Tamari, and even Hinata. What? Mrs. Yamanaka clarified, it appears Naruto. Dono has taken a liking to Ino's friends and chosen them to be his mates also. Inoichi froze in shock as he realized that the day he had been dreading had finally come. His baby girl was being abducted by a man, and right out of his nightmare, Ino was joining his harem. However, this was the son of his land's goddess, so he couldn't protest even if he wanted to. Knowing her husband's thoughts, Mrs. Yamanaka made an effort to calm him down by saying, Ino is in good hands, Inoichi. What makes you say that? Inoichi asked his wife as he jolted out of his reverie. With a sad tone, he inquired. I had the opportunity to speak with Naruto shortly after you fainted, and he is a kind boy. When Mrs. Yamanaka looked at Inoichi, she smiled brightly and said, he made me a promise that he'll protect Ino and her happiness. She added, he's full of curiosity and energy, also very charming and funny. How can you be so certain that he will fulfill his commitment? He asked. My ninja method is to never break my word, which is why I quote, why don't you go talk to him yourself? She concluded, her smile never leaving her face, her husband still looking uncertain. In this manner, you will be able to observe his character for yourself. Inoichi liked the concept. You're right, if our daughter is going to spend the rest of her life with him, then as her father I must make sure he's right for her. Mrs. Yamanaka applauded, saying, that's the spirit. I hope they give us grandchildren soon. Inoichi went pale at that. Right, grandchildren. He felt dizzy at the idea of his daughter having sex with Naruto. The Hyuga compound with their Byakugans in the soft fist stance, Hiyashi Hyuga stood facing his daughter, waiting for the other to move. Hiyashi took the initiative, saying, 8 trigrams vacuum palm. He creates a vacuum shell and launches it in Hinata's direction with a fast palm thrust. Rotation. After releasing a lot of chakra from all the chakra points on her body, Hinata spins quickly, forming a shield of chakra that reflects the attack back at Hiyashi, who avoids it by leaping into the air. When she stops spinning, Hinata looks at her father and leaps after him, and the two fight in midair while using a gentle fist. As he struck Hinata in the chest, Hiyashi warned, "You're being reckless, Hinata." However, she was engulfed in a cloud of smoke that soon dissipated to reveal a log. A substitution? As he landed on the ground, Hinata charged at him once more, attacking with greater vigor than before. Hiyashi was still able to block her attacks, but for a brief moment he noticed something in Hinata's chakra just before one of her strikes pushed him back. Hiyashi looked down just in time to see a vacuum shell approaching him, and he countered it using the same technique. What was that? As he turned to face his daughter, Hiyashi noticed that her chakra was still normal. Before he could think about it any longer, Hinata charged at him. They kept blocking each other's strikes until Hiyashi saw an opening and struck Hinata's left side and struck. Even though Hinata's face contorted in agony, her father persisted. 8 trigrams 64 palms. Before hitting Hinata, he yelled, 2 palms, 4 palms, 8 palms, 16 palms, 30.2 palms. As he struck Hinata's chakra points, Hiyashi yelled, 8 trigrams 64 palms. As the final blow threw Hinata back, she rolled wildly across the training field before Hiyashi finished. Hiyashi turned off his Byakugan and straightened up, declaring, "I win this battle, daughter." Hinata stumbled to her feet and said, "Not yet, father." His tone was severe as he said, "Hinata, you are in no condition to continue." Something inside Hinata told her to keep going, to keep pushing herself, so she ignored him, clenched her fist, and looked down at her father. Hiyashi looked into his daughter's resolute eyes, but something else in them unnerved him. Hinata charged at him once more, and as he blocked her blows, he was about to kill her when, to his surprise, she swatted his attack away. Then, he squatted down and turned her back to his father to elbow him in the stomach. Hiyashi gasped as the air left his lungs and grabbed his stomach, and he staggered back and glaring at his daughter. This chakra, it's... Hiyashi's thoughts were cut short when Hinata stepped forward, her Byakugan activated, and her open palm facing him. The next thing he knew, he was flung back until his back hit a wall. Before realizing what she had done, Hinata blinked a few times before running to her father and exclaiming, "Father, are you okay?" She rushed to his aid and assisted him in standing up. "Hinata, what?" Hiyashi moaned in agony, realizing that the impact had undoubtedly hurt his back. He turned to face Hinata, but his daughter's eyes were wide with shock and her attention was behind him. He turned around and was astounded to see a paw print indented into the wall where he had collided with it. Lord Hiyashi. A branch member of the Hyuga clan ran up to Hinata and Hiyashi as they turned around, stopping 5 feet away. "We have a visitor who would like to talk to you and Lady Hinata." With urgency, he informed him. As the branch member nodded and headed to notify their guests, Hiyashi said, "Okay, we'll be there soon." As her palms began to glow, Hinata put them against Hiyashi's back and said, "Let me heal your back, father." Hiyashi thanked, already sensing that the pain in his back was lessening until it was gone entirely. "Thank you, daughter. How is your back feeling right now?" As she took her hands off her father's back, Hinata asked softly. Hiyashi said, "Much better, Lady Shizune taught you well." Since her father rarely gave her praise, Hinata blushed when he said, "Lady Shizune is an excellent teacher, she truly is a brilliant medical shinobi." As one might anticipate from someone who was personally instructed by our goddess, having a talented teacher is insufficient. To master what their teacher has taught them, a student must be eager to learn and push themselves, Hiyashi advised his daughter. As she and her father entered the main house and made their way to the living room, Hinata said, "Yes, father." As they approached, her heart began to beat quickly. "What's happening? Is it because of my argument with my father earlier?" Hinata asked herself, covering her heart with her right hand. When they finally got there, they noticed that Hanabi and Neji were sitting on a cushion with their legs folded underneath them. But what really startled the father and daughter was the person standing in front of them. The goddess and her family were peacefully enjoying tea in their living room. When Tsunade first saw them, she grinned and said, "Hiyashi Hyuga, I presume." Milady." Hiyashi bowed before his goddess while on his knees. "And your oldest daughter must be this one. I assume you have an heir?" Tsunade inquired, glancing at Hinata, who was still standing and had her mouth open in shock. Hiyashi raised his head slightly and said to his goddess, "Yes, milady, she is to take over leadership of the Hyuga clan. To what do we owe the honor of your visit, milady?" Tsunade's smile wavered a little, but she said, "Yes, well, I'm here to inform you about what happened between your daughter and my son." Hanabi and Neji were taken aback by Hiyashi's nervous demeanor, as he has always exuded a sense of composure and discipline. Hinata's face turned a bright red as she recalled the kiss she shared with Naruto. Neji and Hanabi nearly choked on their tea as Tsunade told the Hyuga family, "My son has chosen your daughter to become his mate." Hiyashi stood motionless, his eyes wide with surprise, and it took a few minutes for him to find the right words. Your son has chosen my daughter to be his mate. Trust it, Naruto spoke up, gaining everyone's attention. I promise to take good care of Hinata. He winked at Hinata, causing her to turn even more red. Temari felt herself growing jealous while Ino just smiled. Sakura on the other hand didn't know what to think of all this. Naruto just smiled as she watched the scene in front of her. It was like watching a real-life soap opera. Neji and Hanabi looked on at Hinata with wide eyes. Hanabi couldn't believe that her sister was going to become a goddess. She was happy for her sister and also concerned. If she was to become a goddess and rule the land of fire with her mate, then she wouldn't be able to see her or spend as much time with her as before. Neji looked at his cousin with concern. The elders of our clan will not waste this opportunity. He reasoned that since the Hyuga elders are constantly advancing their own plans for the clan, Hinata's transformation into a goddess will present them with a chance to increase the clan's power. Hiyashi bowed his head once more and thanked him, saying, My clan and I are deeply honored that your son has chosen my daughter to be his mate. Naruto stood up and walked in front of Hinata, saying, No way. The honor is mine, Hinata. Chan is a very intelligent woman, Naruto said. I adore intelligent women. He gave Hinata a smile, which made her smile, and then he grinned at the other girls. Jiraiya joked, a dummy like you needs all the brains he can get. In response, Naruto blasted, like you have Chan. After glancing at Tsunade, Jiraiya remarks, Yep, she's a real dummy, so she really need my brilliant mind. Tsunade is grinning at him. A frown quickly replaced Tsunade's smile, and she raised her hand to tug on Jiraiya's ear, saying, Ow, 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 I was just kidding. Everyone in the room is both honored and shocked to be able to see a side of the gods that no one else can. Naruto spoke softly to Hinata while they were preoccupied with Jiraiya and Tsunade. Hinata. Chan, I hope you think I'm deserving of being your partner. When Hinata hears this, her eyes enlarge. No Lord Naruto, you're worthy to have any woman you so desire. Naruto told her, That's very kind of you to say, Hinata. Chan, and please don't call me Lord. Hinata turned away shyly because she felt hot all over from being close to Naruto. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, and then she felt a wave of confidence wash over her. She turned to face him and opened her eyes, which were now barely visible pupils, and said, As you wish, Naruto-kun. Her confident smile didn't go unnoticed. Maybe he can be a good influence to Oni-chan. Hanabi thought, a smile forming on her lips, as she watched her shy sister, who could hardly defend herself and always spoke softly when speaking to others, speak confidently to someone. Returning their focus to herself, Tsunade said, Anyway, as is customary, we bestow upon your family this gift. She produced another golden fox idol and handed it to Hiyashi. Hiyashi accepted the gift with grace, saying, On behalf of the Hyuga clan, we humbly accept your gift, milady. Tsunade looked at Hinata and said, We would also like to invite your daughter with us to visit the memorial stone. When she saw Hinata's slitted pupils, which were hardly visible, she got up from her cushion and walked over to stand by her son. Chan, is something wrong? Naruto inquired warily. After looking into Hinata's eyes, Tsunade smiles softly and says, It's nothing, Naru-chan. I just need to pacify the fox chakra within her. She lifts her right hand and presses it to Hinata's forehead. The green chakra soon covers her hand, but rather than calming the chakra, it seems to intensify. She quickly removes her palm, and the chakra starts to calm, but Hinata's eyes remain slits. What just happened? Milady, is something wrong? Hinata cautiously inquired, oblivious to what had just transpired. Tsunade lied and said, Nothing's wrong, I was just making sure of something. So, would you like to join us? Hinata bowed respectfully and said, I would be honored, milady. All right, let's go. Hinata burst out laughing as Naruto said this with enthusiasm. Tsunade was unable to comprehend what had just transpired. The fox chakra is reacting strongly with her, just like Temari. However, why? As they said goodbye to Hinata's family and made their way to their destination, she thought. Hinata was grinning the entire time and walking next to Naruto, who seemed to make her feel warmer just by being around him. Does being in love feel like this? Hinata realized that she had just met Naruto and had barely gotten to know him, but that, similar to the romance novels she reads, there is a feeling of warmth and a loss of breath when one is close to the person one is meant to be with. She was more shocked by the number of naughty thoughts that seemed to be taking over her mind at the moment, which made her lick her lips hungrily without realizing it while Ino watched her with her own narrowed eyes and a cunning smile on her lips. Shizune is kneeling in front of a stone that resembles the tip of a kunai at the memorial stone. She is holding a bouquet of flowers in her arms before setting them in front of the stone. Hello uncle. Shizune said, just another typical day at the hospital. On the other hand, the entire village is celebrating Naruto Kun's birthday today. She laughed at that, but then her voice became serious. That incident a couple of years ago really got to her. She put her right hand on her chest, over her heart, and said, I believe that the scars in her heart were slowly healing, and with Naruto's birth she believed her mother's heart to be healed. Even though mother would much rather celebrate at home and avoid ever coming to the village altogether. Her old scars were reopened after the incident, though. Nay. Chan. When Shizune turned around, she saw Naruto running toward her and waving at her. She yells, Naruto-kun, and rushes to meet him. They put their arms around one another before Naruto spins her around, making her laugh. Naruto told her, now I'm big enough to do this, Nay. Chan. Shizune used to spin him around when he was younger. Shizune smiles at her younger brother, who was a little taller than her before, after he stops and puts his older sister on her feet. Ruffling his spiky hair, she raised her arm. Naruto blushed and whimpered, Nay. Chan, stop that. I'm not a little kid anymore. Naruto turned away in shame as Shizune remarked, you'll always be my baby brother Naruto-kun. You're just so cute, your future mate will be so lucky to have you as her mate. At this point, Naruto turned to face her with a dazzling smile that made Shizune think of their mother and that she cherished. Because every time she saw it, it made her day. Naruto exclaimed, but I already found my mates, Nay. Chan, to her. At this, Shizune blinked. Why you did? Yeah, there. I see you've arrived already, Shizune. Shizune noticed her parents grinning at her when she turned to look behind Naruto. She exclaimed with excitement, Mother, Father, before approaching their parents and embracing them both. While stroking his daughter's head, Jiraiya inquired, and how's my princess doing? Shizune responded, I'm doing great, Dad, as she and her parents broke off their embrace. Tsunade inquired, have you been waiting long? Before her focus was diverted to her parents' companions, Shizune informed her, not too long, I only arrived a couple of minutes ago. Girls, what are you doing here? Naruto exclaimed with joy, Auntie Tsunade invited us. Shizune raised an eyebrow at her adoptive mother and asked, she did? As Ino walked over to Shizune, Tsunade said, yes, well, there's a reason for that. Would it be okay if I told her, milady? Ino politely inquired. According to Tsunade, oh, sure. You see, Shizune-san, Naruto-kun has chosen me, Sakura, Lady Temari, and Hinata to be his mates. Ino grinned at her before turning to face Shizune. Her eyes shifted to slits. Shizune turned to face her brother after her eyes widened and she glanced at her mother, who nodded and sighed. But you were barely here for more than a few hours. As he put his arm around Tsunade, Jiraiya said proudly, because he's a very lucky man, just like his father. I assume that going forward, we'll refer to you as Oni. Chan? Ino gave Shizune a wink. After gathering her thoughts, Shizune answered, don't be getting ahead of yourselves, you still need to prove yourselves. Show ourselves? Ino raised an eyebrow. You know us personally, Shizune-san. You've been training us for years. You know we're worthy, Ino said with assurance. Temari added, we have to fight her. I don't think that's what she meant. Why? Sakura inquired. Tsunade responded solemnly, to make sure you have what it takes to rule alongside Naruto. The challenge from Ino was, bring it on. I'm going to win, Temari continued. Shizune turned to face her father and sighed as she watched her mother sneer at Ino and Temari. It's true what they say, blondes do have more fun, he laughed. After chuckling to herself, Shizune realized something crucial. Mom, Dad, there's something you should know. Shizune caught everyone's attention. What is it? Tsunade inquired. Shizune's parents' eyes widened as she said, Danzo paid me a visit in my office before I came here. He wants to talk to the two of you and I think it's about Naruto-kun. He doesn't waste any time, does he? Tsunade said, her eyes narrowing and turning to slits, she snarled. We can't avoid it. Jiraiya responded, it's best to deal with this now and at our leisure than wait for him to surprise us. Actually, that seems like a smart plan. After we finish up here, we'll go in the direction of the Hokage Tower. Tsunade went to stand in front of the memorial stone, knowing that Danzo would likely be there with the other two elders. Her mate and kids soon joined her, so the girls chose to stay back and give them some privacy. Tsunade said softly, Hey Dan, long time no see. I'm sorry I haven't been visiting you as often as I would like, but I have my reasons. She closed her eyes, recalling the painful memories of the village. Jiraiya and I have kept our promise. Our love has only grown stronger and because of it. She turns to her son and smiles tenderly, saying, There's someone I would like you to meet. Tsunade takes a step back as Naruto approaches the memorial stone. Hey. Naruto waved at the memorial stone and then clumsily scratched the back of his head, not knowing what he was doing. He took a deep breath before continuing. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, and I'm telling you this because my parents told me about you. I wish I had had the opportunity to meet you, but I know you and my uncle Nawaki, along with the rest of our family, are keeping watch over us. They say you're a great guy. It couldn't have been easier, so I would like to thank you for taking care of my Ka-chan. I hate that. As Shizune and Jiraiya giggled, Tsunade spoke up behind him. After laughing, Naruto went on, don't worry, I'll make sure she and Shizune Ni-chan are safe. The same is true for my friends. I am the god of the land of fire, and it is my sworn duty to protect it and all who live there, he said loudly enough for his fellows to hear. Like the shinobi of the leaf and my ancestors. Uncle Dan, I'll speak to you later. Naruto said goodbye and went back to his family's side. Tsunade led the way and said, okay, let's go over to the Hokage Tower. Should we accompany you, milady? With timidity, Hinata inquired. After a few moments of staring at them, Tsunade opened her mouth to say something, but Jiraiya interrupted, saying, of course, it's essential that you come along. Why? Sakura asked. As they all made their way to the Hokage Tower, Tsunade realized what Jiraiya was referring to and smiled, because you'll help shut down one of his plans.
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.